The Nile, winding its way through the heart of Egypt, has always been more than just a river. It is the very lifeblood of a civilization that rose from its shores, flourishing for thousands of years. It is as though the ancient Egyptians understood something that we have only come to realize in fragments, that the Nile was both a giver of life and a silent, unpredictable force that commanded respect. To the Egyptians, the river was more than water. It was a divine presence, a gift from the gods, but also something mysterious, perhaps even dangerous. By day, the Nile is a picture of serenity. The waters flow steadily, reflecting the golden sun and shimmering like liquid jewels across the vast landscape. The river brings with it fertility, nourishing the lands it touches, creating a world where crops grow tall and cities thrive. The Egyptians built their lives around it, their gods watched over it, and every day they used its waters to transport goods, build empires, and sustain their families. To the people of Egypt, the river's blessings seemed endless, as if the Nile had always been, and always would be, a constant source of life. But as the sun sets, and the dark shadows of night begin to creep over the land, something changes. The river no longer feels like the peaceful, life-sustaining force it once was. As night envelops the Nile, the water takes on a different aura, one of secrecy, of hidden depths. The darkened river now becomes a labyrinth of silent threats. What was once familiar and nurturing now becomes a world of unknown dangers, unseen forces, and hidden terrors that lurk just beneath the calm surface. Travelers who dared to navigate its waters after nightfall often spoke of strange sounds, whispers that floated on the wind, the eerie splash of something moving just out of sight, the faintest ripples disturbing the stillness, almost as though the river itself were alive. The darkness seemed to hold more than just shadows. The same river that sustained life also hid dangers that could end it. Crocodiles that silently slid through the waters, venomous snakes that made their homes along the banks, and, for those who believed in the mystical forces of ancient Egypt, spirits and gods that ruled over the night. It was said that no one truly knew what lay beneath the surface of the Nile after sunset. The current, which appeared to be gentle by day, grew more powerful under the cover of darkness. Ships and boats that had sailed the river without issue during daylight could easily become lost in the blackness, their passengers unaware of what dangerous creatures swam beside them. The river's silence seemed to amplify the fear, and the moonlight only served to reveal a world filled with hidden perils. The mysteriousness of the Nile after sunset wasn't just in its physical dangers. The very idea of venturing onto the river at night carried with it a kind of supernatural weight. For the Egyptians, the night was a time when the boundary between the living and the dead seemed to blur. Spirits of the departed were thought to travel along the river's waters, crossing over to the other side. Those who traveled the Nile after dark, especially on sacred or forbidden routes, had to contend with more than just predators. They had to face the unseen world of the dead. Whether it was the gods watching over them, or vengeful spirits lurking just out of sight, the unknown dangers of the Nile after sunset went beyond the physical. It was a journey through the heart of mystery itself. The river's enigmatic nature was not lost on those who relied on it for survival, but it was the very same unpredictable force that made it so deeply ingrained in the culture of ancient Egypt. The Nile was both the source of all life and the keeper of its deepest, darkest secrets. In the quiet moments of night, with the river's gentle current flowing unnoticed beneath the starlit sky, the Nile whispered its mysteries. And it was in those moments that some of the most perilous and life-altering experiences could unfold. As we continue our journey through the hidden dangers of the Nile, we'll begin to explore the darker side of travel along its waters. What secrets lie hidden beneath the calm surface, waiting to reveal themselves? And how did ancient Egyptians navigate both the blessings and the terrifying threats of this powerful river after sunset? Ancient Egypt, as powerful and vast as it became, was built on a simple yet profound principle. The Nile was its lifeblood. From the deserts of the west to the fertile lands of the delta, every facet of Egyptian society was bound to the river. It was not merely a source of water or food, it was the highway that connected the various regions of the empire, a crucial route for trade, communication, and military movement. The ancient Egyptians knew this well. They relied on the river's constant flow to sustain their economy, culture, and political dominance. However, navigating this mighty waterway required more than just the ability to cross from one side to the other. It required knowledge, skill, and innovation. The first, most obvious mode of transport along the Nile was the boat. Long before the age of the pharaohs, the Egyptians had mastered the art of boat building. Their earliest boats were simple wooden crafts, but over time, these evolved into larger, more sophisticated vessels. The ancient Egyptians constructed boats that could be used for trade, warfare, and travel. But the most impressive aspect of these vessels was their versatility. The boats could sail with the winds, harnessing the prevailing northerly breeze to carry them downstream, while oarsmen rowed against the current when traveling upstream. The ability to harness the forces of nature was not only a feat of engineering but also a testament to the Egyptians' deep understanding of their environment. However, traveling on the Nile was not as simple as hopping onto a boat and setting sail. The river, despite its predictable flow, had an unpredictable nature, especially at night. During the day, travelers had the advantage of sunlight, the wide open sky, and the sense of orientation that comes with knowing the land around you. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, the river became an entirely different beast. The gentle lapping of the water during the day could transform into something far more threatening as darkness descended. For the ancient Egyptians, traveling on the Nile, especially at night, required careful preparation. Pilots and navigators had to rely on an intricate set of skills. In a time before modern compasses or navigational charts, they used the stars above as their guide. The night sky was their map, with the constellations serving as the fixed points that led them safely along the river. These celestial markers were not just a tool for navigation, they were steeped in divine significance, as the Egyptians believed that the gods themselves watched over the night travelers. The brightest star, Sirius, was of particular importance, as its appearance in the sky signaled the start of the annual flooding of the Nile, a vital event for Egyptian agriculture. But this same star, and others, also served as signposts in the night, helping travelers navigate the endless stretch of the river under the shadow of darkness. Yet, even the most skilled navigators could not entirely control the river's temperamental nature. At night, the Nile could be deceptive. The waters that seemed calm by day could be treacherous by night. The current, though steady during the daylight hours, became unpredictable in the darkness. The sound of the water could be misleading, causing travelers to misjudge the flow of the river, leading them into dangerous waters, where the currents were too swift, or where the depths were not as expected. This is where the real skill of the ancient Egyptian navigator came into play. Not only did they have to understand the stars and the flow of the river, but they also had to possess an uncanny ability to feel the water beneath the boat, to sense the subtle shifts in the current, the rise and fall of the tides, and the changes in the air that heralded danger. There were also, of course, the boats themselves designed with both functionality and safety in mind. The larger vessels, such as the royal barges used by the pharaohs, were equipped with all the comforts of luxury. The mighty pharaohs travelled the Nile in grand style, aboard ornate ships adorned with gold, ivory, and lapis lazuli, their sails fluttering in the wind and their oarsmen rowing in rhythmic unison. These boats could carry large groups of people, from soldiers to high-ranking officials, in comfort and safety, as they moved between the monumental cities along the Nile. Yet, while the pharaohs and their elite moved with grandeur, the common traveller was not so fortunate. They relied on smaller, less ornate vessels, often powered only by their own hands and the occasional breeze. These boats were more fragile, more susceptible to the dangers of the river, especially at night. But the most dangerous journeys were those made in the dark, where even the smallest misjudgment could lead to disaster. Travelling the Nile at night was like walking a razor's edge. The boatmen and navigators knew that the waters could hide dangers that would not reveal themselves until it was far too late. Predators like crocodiles, which could easily ambush a boat with no warning, and venomous snakes that slithered along the riverbanks or into the water itself, were just some of the natural hazards that lurked beneath the surface. Even the water itself was not always as safe as it seemed. Water levels could fluctuate with the changing seasons, and what appeared to be solid ground could give way to a sudden drop into the deep, treacherous waters. And yet, for the Egyptians, this was their lifeline, their path to travel, trade, and survival. They could not abandon it, no matter how much it threatened. As the river carved through the landscape, it shaped the way the Egyptians built their cities, their roads, and their homes. The infrastructure that surrounded the Nile was just as critical to the civilization as the river itself. Large stone quays and docking stations were constructed along the riverbanks, providing safe harbors for boats to rest during the day or night. These docks became hubs of activity markets, trade posts, and places of rest for weary travelers. The Egyptians also built bridges and canals to connect the river with the fertile lands on either side. These innovations allowed for the efficient movement of goods and people, further enhancing the importance of the Nile in their daily lives. Yet, with all this preparation, even the Egyptians knew that the river could not be fully tamed. It was, at its core, an untamable force capable of granting life and taking it away in a single, swift motion. Travelers on the Nile, whether rich or poor, experienced or novice, were at the mercy of the river's whims. And at night, when the shadows grew long and the mysteries of the river deepened, those who braved its waters faced the full scope of what lay beneath its surface. What dangers awaited those who ventured into the dark heart of the Nile? What hidden forces would test their skill, their courage, and their will to survive? In the ancient world, the river was both a pathway to greatness and a graveyard for the unwary. As we continue to explore the stories of those who traveled the Nile, we'll see how the seemingly peaceful waters could turn into a deadly maze, where even the most experienced travelers would find themselves lost. The architecture of travel on the Nile was impressive, but it was never without its risks. And as the Egyptians knew too well, even the most carefully constructed journeys could be undone by the forces that lay just beyond the reach of human understanding. When night falls on the Nile, the tranquil river that has sustained civilizations for millennia transforms. The once calm, shimmering waters become a veil for something far more sinister. Hidden creatures, predators that lurk beneath the surface, waiting for the cover of darkness to strike. The ancient Egyptians were well aware of these dangers, for the Nile was both a source of life and a silent killer, harboring a menagerie of dangerous creatures that could turn an innocent journey into a fight for survival. Among the most fearsome of these creatures were the crocodiles. The Nile crocodile, with its massive size and stealthy movements, was a force to be reckoned with. In the murky waters, a crocodile could glide undetected, its eyes and nostrils the only parts visible above the surface. These predators were the true kings of the river, capable of striking with incredible speed and force. The Egyptians knew them well, and they both revered and feared these creatures. Crocodiles were seen as symbols of strength and power, often associated with the god Sobek, who was depicted as a man with the head of a crocodile. To encounter one on the river was both an omen and a real threat. Travelers on the Nile, especially at night, faced the real possibility of ambush. The crocodile's ambush tactics were deadly. It would wait patiently in the water until the moment was right, then surge forward with terrifying speed, its jaws snapping shut with bone-crushing force. For anyone unlucky enough to fall into the river, there was little chance of survival. A crocodile's bite could sever limbs, drag a victim under the surface, and leave little trace behind. The Nile, despite its life-giving properties, was a merciless host to these creatures, and the darkness only heightened their danger. With the river's waters turning black at night, it was near impossible to spot a lurking crocodile until it was too late. But crocodiles were not the only creatures to fear. Venomous snakes, some of the deadliest on earth, also made their homes along the Nile's banks. The Egyptian cobra, a snake as feared as it was revered, coiled in the reeds near the water, waiting for its prey. Its venom was swift, paralyzing its victim before death could even register in the mind. Unlike crocodiles, snakes often operated in silence, their presence known only by the faint rustle of the reeds or the soft hiss of their warning. For travelers journeying by boat, these snakes presented a unique danger. They could strike from the shoreline or, even more terrifying, slither into the boat itself. In the darkness, their movements would be nearly undetectable until it was too late. Ancient texts tell stories of travelers who, in the midst of their journeys, were suddenly struck by a venomous snake, leaving them to die in the cold grip of the river's night. Yet, even in the face of these terrifying creatures, the Egyptians understood that the river's dangers were not only confined to what they could see. The darkness held its own unique brand of danger, one that went beyond physical threats. The river, with all its creatures, also carried with it the weight of superstition and fear. The Nile was believed to be home to spirits and deities, some of whom were said to protect the river, while others were thought to cause harm to those who dared to cross it after dark. These spirits, whether friendly or vengeful, added an intangible layer of danger to the river. Travelers could never be sure if the strange sounds they heard in the night were the cries of animals or the whispers of spirits that haunted the river's depths. Real-life accounts from ancient texts provide glimpses of these dangers. One story tells of a trader who, traveling along the river at night, was suddenly pulled from his boat by an unseen force. His crew searched for him along the banks, but he was never found. Some whispered that it was the work of crocodiles, while others believed that the spirits of the river had claimed him. The truth, as always with the Nile's mysteries, remained elusive. The Egyptians, knowing the dangers that lurked beneath the surface, did not take these threats lightly. Even the bravest among them were cautious when traveling after sunset, for the river's calm waters could quickly turn into a deadly hunting ground. The Egyptians' reverence for the Nile's power extended to the creatures that called it home. Crocodiles, snakes, and the myriad of other dangers became symbols of the river's dual nature, life and death, intertwined, inseparable. To navigate the Nile, particularly at night, was to acknowledge the balance of these forces, to respect the dangers and accept the possibility of encountering them. It was a world where the river could be both a sanctuary and a grave. The Nile's wildlife, with all its deadly beauty, was only one of the many perils faced by travelers. But the threats weren't only physical. The darkness of the river held other, more intangible dangers that were shaped by the superstitions and beliefs of the people who lived alongside it. As we move from the tangible threats posed by the animals of the Nile, we'll now turn our attention to the more mysterious forces that lurked beneath the surface. What supernatural dangers awaited those who dared to navigate the Nile after sunset? What unseen forces could affect the journey of a traveler, long after the crocodiles had disappeared into the depths? The Nile was not just a river to the ancient Egyptians. It was a living, breathing entity, powerful and unpredictable, a force that governed both the physical world and the unseen realm. For those who lived along its banks, the river was as much a god as it was a threat. As day turned to night, the river transformed from a known entity into something far more mysterious. It became a domain of shadows and whispers, where gods and spirits ruled over the waters, and every ripple could signify an unseen presence lurking beneath the surface. The Egyptians had a deep, reverential relationship with the Nile, and this was reflected in their religious beliefs. The river itself was considered divine, and the gods who watched over it were central to their understanding of life, death, and everything in between. The most prominent of these was Hapi, the god of the annual flood. Hapi's flooding brought fertility to the land, ensuring that the crops would grow and the people would thrive. The Egyptians saw Hapi as the source of the Nile's power, and thus the river itself was sacred. But this divine blessing was also a reminder of how little control humans had over nature. Hapi could be generous, but he could also be wrathful, flooding the land with more water than necessary, destroying crops and homes. Such was the duality of the Nile, a provider and a destroyer, a giver of life and a harbinger of death. However, The gods were not the only supernatural entities that populated the Nile's waters. The Egyptians believed the river was inhabited by spirits, some benevolent, others vengeful. The spirits of the dead were thought to traverse the Nile in their journey to the afterlife. For the living, this meant that the waters were not just a physical boundary but a spiritual one as well. The ancient texts often spoke of spirits who haunted the river at night, restless souls unable to find peace, or gods who walked in the darkness, watching over the living and sometimes intervening in their fates. As night fell, these spirits were thought to stir, and the very act of crossing the river after sunset was fraught with potential peril. Travelers who set out on the Nile after dusk knew that they were entering a realm governed by forces they could not understand. The darkness of the river was not just physical but spiritual. The moonlight that bathed the river at night was said to illuminate the path of the dead, guiding them across the waters. It was believed that the river's waters, flowing ceaselessly into the unknown, held the souls of those who had passed on. A boat drifting along the river at night was not just moving through water, it was passing through a world filled with unseen spirits. The Egyptians themselves would sometimes leave offerings along the riverbanks, fruits, incense, and treasures, hoping to appease the spirits that might be watching them as they traveled. The presence of these spirits didn't just shape the beliefs of the Egyptians, it also influenced their daily lives. Superstitions ran deep, and no traveler ventured onto the Nile at night without first preparing for what they might encounter. Tales of spirits who attacked travelers in the night were common, passed down through generations to warn those who dared to cross the river. One particularly chilling legend told of a traveler who, after unknowingly angering the river gods, was pulled into the water by an unseen hand. His cries for help were unheard. His boat found the next day, empty, drifting aimlessly along the river's current. Some believed the spirits of the dead had claimed him, while others whispered that the Nile itself had swallowed him whole, its insatiable hunger for souls never satisfied. But not all spirits were malevolent. Some were thought to protect the river, acting as guardians to those who approached with respect and reverence. The Egyptians believed that the gods and spirits were particularly sensitive to the intentions of the traveler. Those who journeyed along the Nile in search of knowledge or with a respectful heart might find themselves blessed by the gods, while those with ill intentions could find themselves caught in a web of misfortune. It was said that the river itself could sense the purity of the soul. A traveler who was pure of heart might receive divine guidance or protection during their journey, while a wicked soul would soon encounter the wrath of the gods, manifesting as violent storms or terrifying creatures from the depths of the river. Even more mysterious was the belief that the Nile was home to otherworldly creatures, entities that straddled the line between the living and the dead. Some legends told of serpent-like creatures with glowing eyes that would surface at night to drag unsuspecting travelers into the depths. Others spoke of strange light seen moving along the water's surface, often dismissed as will-o'-the-wisps, but believed by many to be the spirits of the deceased, guiding the souls of the dead to their final resting place. These eerie phenomena were feared by the Egyptians, who saw them as omens of disaster or warnings of danger yet to come. Travelers, especially those unfamiliar with the river, would often turn back upon witnessing such lights, afraid to continue their journey through what might be a realm not meant for the living. Superstitions also extended to the sounds of the night. The Nile was said to carry whispers, the voices of the spirits, or perhaps the voices of the gods themselves. These whispers, carried by the wind, would reach the ears of the travelers, sometimes giving them advice or warning them of impending danger. But the messages were often cryptic, leaving the traveler uncertain about their meaning. Was it a divine command, or was it simply the wind playing tricks? No one could be sure, and that uncertainty made traveling the river at night all the more perilous. The very sounds of the Nile, the rustle of reeds, the splash of water, the creak of a boat took on an otherworldly quality in the dark. It was easy to believe that the river's murmurs weren't just the sounds of nature but the voices of the unseen world, communicating in a language known only to those brave enough to listen. The Egyptians' deep-rooted belief in the supernatural, combined with their understanding of the Nile's natural dangers, created a world where reality and myth were inextricably linked. The spirits and gods that lived along the river were as real to them as the crocodiles or the venomous snakes. The river was not merely a physical landscape, it was a realm of power, mystery, and divine influence. For the Egyptians, crossing the Nile after sunset was never a simple journey. It was a passage through both the physical and spiritual worlds, and it was a journey fraught with dangers, both seen and unseen. As we shift our focus from the mysterious forces that shaped the beliefs of the ancient Egyptians, we now turn our attention to the more tangible, physical dangers that accompanied travel along the Nile at night. What unseen threats awaited the travelers who ventured too far into the darkness? How did the river's unpredictable nature continue to challenge even the bravest of souls? These questions set the stage for a deeper exploration into the more tangible perils of navigating the Nile after dark. The Nile, a lifeline for ancient Egypt, was a river known for its rhythm, its consistency, and its power. By day, it was a clear and direct route, its waters reflecting the sun and guiding travelers, merchants, and soldiers alike on their journeys. But when the sun dipped below the horizon and darkness settled over the land, the Nile transformed. The very river that had provided so much life to Egypt now became a daunting expanse of blackness, hiding dangers that only the brave or the foolhardy would dare to face. As nightfall descended, the clarity of day slipped away, and the Nile became an entirely different world. The river, once a friendly companion, now seemed vast and endless, stretching into an abyss of shadow. The first challenge was the sheer absence of light. With no electric lamps, no streetlights to guide the way, the ancient travelers were thrust into a world where the only light was that of the stars above or the faint flicker of the moon if it chose to show itself. The waters, which in daylight revealed their shallow banks and clear flow, became an inscrutable void, impenetrable and disorienting. In this boundless blackness, every wave seemed to echo with a sense of foreboding, and even the most experienced navigators were forced to rely solely on the sky above them and their instincts to find their way. The lack of visibility created an overwhelming sense of isolation. In the dark, the river's familiar landmarks were no longer visible, and what should have been a straightforward journey turned into a navigation nightmare. The water, once so full of life, became a hidden expanse that made even seasoned travelers feel vulnerable. With no clear way to judge their distance or direction, the river became an alien landscape. The current, once a guide, could now easily deceive, sweeping boats far from their intended course. The navigators, skilled as they were, found themselves utterly dependent on the stars that hung overhead constellations they had studied since childhood, their locations shifting slightly with the changing seasons. They would know that, if they steered their boats in the direction of the stars, they could reach their destination. But in a river so long, so full of twists and turns, even a slight miscalculation could lead them into the unknown. The thickening darkness also brought with it the unpredictable phenomena of the Nile's night air. The river was known to shroud itself in fog, particularly during the cooler months. As the hot air from the day met the cool night temperatures, mist would roll in from the water's surface, obscuring vision even further. The fog added a layer of disorientation, transforming the river into a labyrinth where even the sharpest senses could fail. The mist would rise, thick and enveloping, blotting out not only the stars but the very riverbank itself. The once familiar landscape, with its trees and cliffs, became a hazy blur, and the boat's course could easily veer into unseen rocks, branches, or hidden shoals. Navigating through this murk was not only dangerous, it was unnerving. Even the bravest travelers spoke of the eerie silence that accompanied the fog, as though the world had disappeared, leaving them in a vast, empty space where nothing could be trusted. But the darkness was not the only challenge. The Nile, during the night, became a place where the natural sounds of the river seemed amplified, creating an atmosphere of tension. The occasional creak of the boat or the ripple of water against its hull took on a menacing quality, as though the river was alive and aware of those who moved across it. Even the cry of an unseen bird or the rustle of reeds on the banks seemed distorted, sending waves of unease through the travelers. The sounds, so familiar during the day, now became indistinct, and with each one came the nagging suspicion that something unseen was waiting just beyond the reach of the senses. The mind of the traveller, already heightened by the uncertainty of the darkness, would begin to weave stories of what might be lurking in the fog, just out of sight. Was that a splash of something large in the water, or was it just the wind? Was that shape on the bank a figure watching, or a trick of the mist? For the Egyptians, the night journey on the Nile was fraught with uncertainty, and even the most seasoned travellers could not escape the feeling that the darkness held something beyond their control. Ancient texts tell of men and women who ventured out onto the river only to return with wild stories of what they had encountered: shadows in the water, voices in the mist, or figures that seemed to move on the edges of their vision. Many of these travellers were quick to attribute such experiences to the supernatural, as it was difficult to separate reality from myth in a world where gods and spirits roamed freely. But the danger of the Nile at night wasn't limited to the intangible. Even without the fear of spirits, the physical challenges were enough to make any journey treacherous. Real-life accounts from ancient Egypt reflect the fear and uncertainty of these nighttime voyages. One story recounts the experience of a group of travellers who, on a routine journey, found themselves caught in a fog so dense that they could no longer see the bow of their boat. In the oppressive stillness, the crew became disoriented, their usual confidence replaced by panic. As they drifted, the boat struck something large, perhaps an underwater rock or a sunken log. The vessel began to sink slowly, and the travellers had no choice but to scramble for safety. The water was cold, and the darkness offered no comfort. For hours, they fought against the current and the fear that they would not make it to shore. When they finally found land, their ordeal had left them shaken, their faith in the river's apparent calmness shattered. Other travellers spoke of hearing strange, unexplainable noises that seemed to come from the depths of the water, sounds that didn't belong to any known animal or natural phenomenon. Some believed these sounds were the work of river spirits, the whispers of the dead, or the movements of gods who ruled the Nile. But for many, the uncertainty was the most terrifying aspect of all. As the fog rolled in and the boat's journey became nothing more than an act of faith, they wondered, how much of the danger was real, and how much was imagined? Was the darkness truly hiding something, or was it just the river playing tricks on their minds? By the time the first light of dawn broke over the Nile, many of these travellers found themselves exhausted, their nerves frayed by the constant tension of navigating through the blackness. The river, in the light of day, no longer seemed quite so menacing, but the memories of the night lingered long after the sun had risen. The Nile, that once familiar waterway, had become a realm of uncertainty, a place where the rules of the day gave way to the unpredictable forces of the night. It was a river that demanded respect, a river that, even in the age of the pharaohs, still held onto its secrets. With the physical dangers of the Nile at night firmly established, it's time to turn to the human element. What were the personal experiences of those who braved the river's night? How did they prepare for the uncertainty of their journey? And what stories did they tell of the dangers they faced? As we delve into the accounts of these travellers, we'll see how the river, both a physical and psychological challenge, pushed them to their limits. The stillness of the Nile at night is not something easily forgotten, especially for those who have ventured into its depths after sunset. The river, so familiar by day, transforms under the cover of darkness, becoming a place of unknowns, where each sound, each ripple, stirs the imagination. Ancient travellers, long ago, were no strangers to the dangers of navigating these waters after nightfall, and many of their stories have been passed down through generations. Their accounts offer a glimpse into the raw fears and experiences faced by those who dared to travel when the world around them seemed to turn on its head. One such account comes from the writings of a merchant travelling along the Nile on a trade expedition. He was no novice to the river. He had made the journey many times before, during the light of day. But this time was different. His crew had set sail at twilight, hoping to make it to a distant port before the day was fully gone. As the sun slipped below the horizon and the blackness of night enveloped the river, the sounds of the world around them began to change. The usual chorus of the river, its gentle lapping against the hull, the calls of distant birds fell silent. Instead, there were whispers. Soft, almost imperceptible sounds that seemed to drift on the air, slipping in and out of hearing, like murmurs in a dream. The merchant recalled how he strained his ears, trying to identify the source of the sounds. Perhaps it was the wind, or the movement of a fish beneath the surface. But the more he listened, the more uneasy he became. The whispers didn't make sense. They weren't like the usual sounds of the river. As the boat made its way further into the night, the merchant's anxiety grew. His crew, too, began to whisper among themselves. The sounds grew louder, and it felt as though something unseen was moving alongside them, just out of sight. Some of the men muttered about spirits, recalling ancient beliefs that the Nile was home to restless souls. They spoke of a spirit that had been known to guide lost travelers to their doom. No spirit, the merchant thought, could make this sound. He had heard it many times before, sounds that could be dismissed as natural, but which tonight seemed far too purposeful. It was a sound that defied explanation. When the merchant and his crew looked over the side of the boat, they saw nothing. Yet, the feeling of being watched, of being followed, was undeniable. Was it a spirit? Or was something far more sinister at play? The merchant never learned the truth. The sounds faded away as mysteriously as they had appeared, and by the time they reached the port, the air was thick with unease, a feeling that lingered long after the journey ended. Another account, from a traveller recounting his journey through the Nile's more treacherous stretches, tells of an experience even more unnerving. This particular traveller, a soldier, had been tasked with moving goods between military outposts at the time of the full moon. He was familiar with the Nile by day, but this journey, taken under the moonlight, was unlike any other he had encountered. As his boat drifted down the river, the soldier, like many before him, found his navigation skills tested to the limit. The shimmering moonlight reflected off the water's surface, making everything seem both beautiful and dangerous, blurring the line between reality and illusion. The soldier recalled hearing strange splashes, sharp, sudden sounds, as though something heavy had just fallen into the water. In his mind, he immediately suspected crocodiles, or perhaps the distant call of a predator, but the sounds grew stranger. They were too erratic, too unpredictable. He strained his eyes, searching the water, but there was nothing there. The ripples, he noted, were moving unnaturally, as though something beneath the surface was causing them. Fear gripped him, yet there was no turning back. His crew, also tense, gripped their paddles, unsure of where the threat might come from. Hours passed, but the feeling of being hunted only grew. The soldier and his men did their best to ignore it, their focus solely on reaching the next port. But something, some deep instinct, told them to watch the water more closely. And then, as the boat made a slow turn along the banks, they saw it. For a fleeting moment, a shape, indistinct and dark, surfaced just ahead of the boat. It was large, its eyes glowing in the moonlight. The soldier's heart pounded. Before he could give an order, the shape vanished beneath the water with an unsettling silence. There was no splash, no sound of retreat, just stillness. The crew immediately began paddling faster, but by the time they reached the safety of land, no one spoke of what they had seen. The soldier did not know whether it had been a crocodile, a spirit, or something else entirely, but the terror of that moment stayed with him long after his journey ended. The stories of these travelers reflect more than just fear. They reflect the profound impact the night had on the human psyche. It was in the darkness of the Nile that the line between myth and reality blurred, where spirits seemed as real as the predators stalking the river's waters. The supernatural and the physical dangers were intertwined, and for those who ventured forth into the night, the distinction between the two was often impossible to make. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of these accounts is the sense of helplessness they convey. For the ancient travelers, the Nile at night was a world in which even the most experienced navigator was no more than a visitor. The waters, the spirits, and the very environment conspired to remind them of their vulnerability. The experiences shared by these men are not simply tales of creatures in the water or strange sounds in the night. They are windows into the psyche of people who lived in a world where unseen dangers were a very real part of their lives. As we move from these harrowing personal accounts, we transition from the experiences of these brave individuals to a broader understanding of how the Egyptians themselves prepared for these dangers. How did they ready themselves for the unknown that awaited them at night? What survival strategies did they develop over centuries of navigating the Nile's dark waters? In the next section, we'll explore the practices and innovations that allowed the ancient Egyptians to endure the perils of nighttime travel on the Nile, from their physical preparations to the spiritual rituals they employed to protect themselves from the unseen forces that lurked beyond the river's surface. In ancient Egypt, preparation for a journey was never taken lightly, especially when it came to navigating the Nile at night. Travelers, whether merchants, soldiers, or adventurers, understood that their survival depended not only on physical readiness, but also on their understanding of the river's mysteries and the unseen forces that lay hidden beneath the surface. The Nile was both a lifeline and a potential grave, and those who dared to navigate it after dark armed themselves with knowledge, tools, and rituals to face the unknown. At the heart of these preparations was the skill of navigation. Ancient Egyptians were well versed in using the stars to guide their way. The clear desert skies provided a perfect backdrop for celestial navigation, and the Egyptians developed an intricate understanding of the night sky. For them, the stars weren't just distant points of light, they were divine signposts that could lead travelers safely through the darkness. The constellation of Orion, for instance, was of great importance. Its stars, known as the Soul of Osiris, were believed to be the guiding lights that led the souls of the dead through the afterlife. To Egyptians, these celestial bodies were both a literal and spiritual guide. Navigating by the stars was a skill that took years to master. Experienced boatmen knew how to read the sky and use the stars' positions to chart their course. The North Star, for example, was a fixed point, and the Egyptians could use its steady position in the sky to maintain their direction no matter how far they drifted. Yet even with this vast knowledge of the heavens, the river still posed challenges. The current, though steady during the day, could become unpredictable at night, and the absence of sunlight made it harder to judge distances. The stars above were a lifeline, but they were not infallible. The same river that flowed with ease in daylight could suddenly become a treacherous labyrinth after dark, with shifting currents and hidden hazards. In addition to their skills in navigation, the Egyptians also relied on a variety of physical tools to prepare for the dangers of nighttime travel. The boats themselves were built for stability and speed, with wide, flat bottoms to help them glide over the shallow waters of the Nile. They were also equipped with large sails to harness the wind, as well as oars for manual control when the wind wasn't favorable. At night, these boats would often carry lanterns, not just for light but to ward off the darkness and any unseen predators that might approach. These lanterns were often placed near the stern, casting a dim glow over the water, allowing the crew to see the ripples that could indicate a nearby threat, whether it was a crocodile lurking beneath the surface or a hidden rock ready to tear the hull apart. The Egyptians understood that the Nile's darkness was not just a physical absence of light, but a breeding ground for danger. Even the seemingly harmless elements of the river could become lethal once the sun went down. Psychologically, the preparation for such a journey required immense resilience. The Egyptians were well aware of the mental toll that traveling at night could take. The silence of the river at night, the fog that would sometimes roll in, the vastness of the water, it was easy to feel isolated, lost, or even haunted. To cope with these fears, travelers would often invoke the gods and spirits of the river, offering prayers and making sacrifices before embarking on their journey. This wasn't just about superstition, it was about instilling a sense of control in an environment that was inherently uncontrollable. The river's dangers were not merely physical, they were psychological. The fear of the unknown, the fear of what might be lurking beneath the surface, could paralyze even the bravest traveler. So, the Egyptians developed rituals to calm the mind and prepare the soul for the challenges ahead. Before embarking on their journeys, travelers would sometimes visit temples dedicated to river gods, offering incense or food as a way of ensuring protection. They would make offerings to Sobek, the crocodile god, hoping for his favor and protection from the very creatures that posed the greatest threat to their lives. These rituals served as both spiritual protection and a way to mentally prepare for the inevitable danger of the journey. In addition to invoking the gods, some travelers would carry amulets, small tokens, imbued with magical properties that were believed to offer protection from harm. These charms, often in the shape of animals or gods, were worn around the neck or kept close at hand, offering a sense of security against the unknown forces of the river. Beyond the spiritual preparations, the Egyptians also relied on the physical environment around them to help them navigate the night. The riverbanks, though hidden in darkness, were still familiar to those who had spent their lives traveling along them. Many boatmen knew the river's twists and turns by heart. Even at night, they could sense the flow of the water, the subtle changes in the current that would tell them when they were nearing a bend or a shallow area. Some travelers would also bring along small, handheld tools like ropes or grappling hooks, which they could use to test the depth of the water or anchor the boat in case the current became too strong or unpredictable. Yet, despite all the knowledge, tools, and rituals, the Egyptians knew that the river's darkness could not be entirely controlled. The unpredictable nature of the Nile, its tides, its fog, the shifting currents, was a constant reminder that the river was not just a force of nature, but a living, breathing entity. Even with all the preparations in place, there was always the chance that something unexpected would occur. The Egyptians understood that the river's dark side could never be fully tamed, no matter how well they prepared. The rituals, tools, and celestial knowledge gave travelers a sense of control, but they could never eliminate the primal fear of what lay beyond the reach of human understanding. The Egyptians believed that the gods themselves, with their capricious nature, often intervened in human affairs. Some believed that the spirits of the river could test the souls of travelers, challenging them with unexpected trials. These tests, though terrifying, were seen as part of the journey. Surviving them was seen as proof of one's strength, both physical and spiritual. As we reflect on the ancient Egyptians' preparations for their nighttime travels, it's clear that their survival tactics were as much about mental fortitude as they were about physical tools. The balance between knowledge of the natural world and reverence for the unseen forces of the river allowed them to face the Nile's many dangers. But even with all the preparation, the Nile's dark side was always just beyond reach, a reminder that some things in the world could never be fully understood. With these preparations in place, travelers would set out onto the river, knowing that they had done all they could to ensure their safety. Yet, despite their careful planning, they would face dangers far greater than they could have anticipated. In the next section, we'll explore the key dangers that these travelers still faced, dangers that no amount of preparation could truly protect them from. What were the real, physical risks that lurked in the shadows, waiting for the unprepared? Without the expert navigators of ancient Egypt, the Nile would have been an endless, terrifying maze, a dark expanse where even the most experienced travelers could easily lose their way. These navigators were not simply boatmen, they were masters of their craft, the unsung heroes whose knowledge of the river allowed for safe passage through one of the most dangerous and unpredictable environments of the ancient world. Their skills, honed over years of practice, were essential not just for survival but for the prosperity of Egypt itself. The vastness of the Nile, its ever-changing currents, the lack of clear landmarks, and the shroud of darkness after nightfall made these navigators invaluable. They possessed a deep, almost mystical understanding of the river's secrets, and were responsible for guiding countless travelers through its perilous waters. The key to a navigator's success lay in their intimate knowledge of the Nile's hidden routes, its shallow points, deep bends, and hidden hazards that were known only to those who had spent their lives on the river. While the majority of travelers would rely on simple paths or the stars above, the navigators knew the river like the back of their hand. They understood the ebb and flow of the water, how the river could change course during seasonal floods, and how to avoid the dangerous whirlpools and currents that could easily capsize a boat. Navigators were the keepers of this knowledge, and their expertise was passed down through generations, an essential thread in the fabric of Egyptian life. The stars were perhaps their most crucial tool for nighttime navigation. In a world without modern instruments, the night sky was the map, and the constellations were the guides. One of the most important constellations for Egyptian navigators was Orion, which was not only used for earthly navigation but also had spiritual significance. Known as the soul of Osiris, it was believed that the gods themselves used the stars to guide souls to the afterlife. And so, for Egyptians, the stars were a divine path. Navigators would use Orion to help steer their boats, aligning their journey with the celestial bodies, often traveling by night when the heat of the day had passed. The North Star, too, was vital, offering a steady point in the sky to orient oneself. The movements of these stars were calculated with an accuracy that allowed travelers to sail confidently even under the shroud of darkness, knowing they were heading in the right direction. But it was not just the stars that navigators relied on. They also had an acute understanding of the river's natural signs, its pulse, so to speak. They could read the current, sensing the subtle changes in the water's flow, which indicated a change in the depth or direction of the river. Experienced navigators knew which bends in the river would bring them into the mouth of an unseen tributary, and which points of the bank marked dangerous shoals or hidden reefs. These navigators had an uncanny ability to feel the rhythm of the river beneath their boats, something that wasn't easily learned, but something that could save lives. They also had an extraordinary knowledge of the river's wildlife, understanding where the crocodiles might lurk and which stretches of water were safe from predators. Their skills were not only practical but deeply attuned to the environment around them. In many ways, these navigators operated in the same way a modern-day pilot might fly through the clouds, using the earth and sky to inform their every move, while staying focused on the journey ahead. The navigators of the Nile had to anticipate not only the changes in the physical landscape, but the potential dangers that could arise, often in an instant. They had to keep their wits about them, reading the currents as though they were reading a story written by the river itself. And yet, despite the importance of their role, these navigators remained largely anonymous. The focus was always on the leaders or the pharaohs, the ones whose names would go down in history. But it was the navigators who made their journeys possible. It was said that some of the most skilled navigators were revered not just for their practical knowledge, but for their spiritual connection to the river. They were seen as guides, not only in the physical sense but in the metaphysical, bridging the gap between the mortal world and the realm of the gods. The journey on the Nile was not just a passage through water. It was a passage through life and death, and the navigators, in their wisdom, understood this deeply. Many navigators believed that the river was alive, that it had a spirit, a presence that could either protect or punish those who sailed upon it. This belief only heightened the sense of responsibility they felt, for in guiding others through the night, they weren't simply steering a boat, they were guiding souls through a journey that had both physical and spiritual significance. The role of these navigators, however, was not without its dangers. Even the best of them couldn't always predict what the river might throw at them. There were accounts of navigators who had steered boats through treacherous waters only to be caught by sudden storms or by fierce winds that would tear the sails from their boats. In some cases, navigators themselves would become lost, swept away by currents too powerful to fight. Their ability to read the river was not foolproof, and the Nile, despite all their knowledge, still held dangers beyond human control. There were no guarantees, and in that sense, every journey, especially those taken at night, was a leap of faith. The navigator, though well prepared, was always at the mercy of the river's whims. One such account from ancient texts speaks of a famous navigator named Nebtawi, who was renowned for his ability to guide boats through even the most treacherous stretches of the Nile. During one of his voyages, he was tasked with guiding a group of merchants through a stretch of the river known for its unpredictable currents and hidden dangers. As the journey began, the weather turned, and thick fog descended, enveloping the boat and making it impossible to see beyond a few feet. Nebtawi, relying on his deep understanding of the river's flow, steered them through the darkened waters, trusting in his sense of the current and the stars above. At one point, the boat began to drift dangerously close to a hidden sandbank. With only moments to spare, Nebtawi called out an order to turn the boat sharply, and they narrowly avoided disaster. The merchants, in awe of his skill, attributed the success of the journey to his divine connection with the river. It was a reminder of how crucial these navigators were, not just as skilled boatmen, but as protectors and guides. Despite their importance, the navigators rarely received the recognition they deserved. While pharaohs, priests, and military leaders were immortalized in hieroglyphs and monuments, the navigators were often left in the shadows, their names lost to history. But without them, the great trade routes, the military campaigns, and the religious pilgrimages along the Nile would have been nearly impossible. They were the silent heroes, whose expertise ensured that Egypt's lifeblood, the Nile, was navigated safely, even through the most terrifying nights. As we shift from these remarkable figures, we turn to the larger cultural and spiritual significance of the Nile itself. The river was not only a physical path that connected Egypt, but it was also the heart of Egyptian mythology, shaping the culture, beliefs, and everyday life of its people. In the next section, we'll explore how the ancient Egyptians viewed the river both as a powerful force of nature and a sacred entity that governed their very existence. Could the river's calm surface be hiding the restless spirits of ancient gods? Were travelers ever truly alone, or was the Nile always watching? For the ancient Egyptians, the answer was a resounding no. The Nile was not merely a river, but a living, breathing force, infused with divine presence and populated by gods and spirits who watched over the land and its people. The river itself was considered sacred, and the ancient Egyptians believed that every aspect of their lives, from birth to death, was intricately tied to its currents. It was both a provider and a protector, but also a harbinger of the unknown, its waters teeming with both benevolent gods and vengeful spirits. At the heart of the Nile's divine presence stood Hapi, the god of the river's annual flooding. Hapi was revered for the way his floods nurtured the land, bringing life-giving silt to the fertile soil and ensuring bountiful harvests. To the Egyptians, Hapi was the embodiment of abundance, and his floods were seen as a blessing, a divine gift that ensured the prosperity of Egypt. However, Hapi was not just a symbol of fertility. He was also a reminder of the Nile's power and unpredictability. The same floods that could provide abundance could also cause destruction, washing away crops, homes, and lives. In the minds of the Egyptians, Hapi's influence was never far from the awareness that the river, in all its glory, could just as easily turn into a force of wrath. But the Egyptians didn't fear Hapi. Instead, they worshipped him, understanding that his presence represented both the blessings and dangers of the river. Offerings of food, incense, and precious goods were made to Hapi, ensuring that he would favor the land with a good harvest. Yet, Hapi was not alone in the river. The Nile was believed to be home to a host of other deities and spirits, each with their own domain and influence over the water. One such deity was Sobek, the crocodile god. Depicted as a man with the head of a crocodile, Sobek was both feared and revered by the ancient Egyptians. Crocodiles were, without a doubt, one of the most dangerous predators of the Nile, and the Egyptians believed that Sobek had control over these creatures. Sobek was seen as a protector of the waters, but also a powerful force of chaos. His dual nature reflected the river's own balance between life and death. In times of peril, Sobek was invoked for protection from the deadly creatures that lurked beneath the river's surface. Yet, he was also a reminder that the Nile's waters could be as dangerous as they were life-giving. To the Egyptians, Sobek symbolized the unpredictable nature of the river, beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. While the gods of the Nile were seen as powerful forces that controlled the river's fate, there were also countless spirits believed to haunt its waters. The spirits of the dead, in particular, were thought to travel along the Nile, crossing over from the world of the living to the afterlife. These spirits were seen as guardians of the river, guiding souls on their journey to the underworld. The Egyptians believed that the Nile itself was a spiritual threshold, a boundary between life and death. It was not only a source of sustenance for the living, but also a guide for the dead. Souls were thought to travel the river's waters, ferried across the current on their way to meet Osiris, the god of the afterlife. It was believed that the river's waters, especially at night, carried the weight of these souls, and those who sailed on the Nile at night might unknowingly encounter the restless spirits of the departed. Some of these spirits were benevolent, watching over travelers and protecting them from harm. However, others were believed to be vengeful, angry at being disturbed on their journey to the afterlife. These malevolent spirits were thought to appear in the form of strange noises, sudden disturbances in the water, or even eerie, unexplainable lights along the river's surface. Travelers who journeyed the Nile at night often invoked the gods for protection, hoping to avoid the wrath of these spirits. To the ancient Egyptians, the dead were never truly gone, and the river's dark waters were believed to be the realm in which the living and the dead coexisted. The line between the two was thin, and the presence of the spirits in the river was a constant reminder of the eternal bond between life and death. The Nile also played a significant role in the spiritual life of the Egyptians, particularly in their funerary practices. As the river was seen as a spiritual boundary, it became a key component in the journey to the afterlife. Boats were often used in the burial process, with the deceased being transported along the Nile to their final resting place. This practice reinforced the belief that the Nile was a sacred passage, a river that bridged the physical world with the spiritual realm. The Egyptians understood that crossing the Nile was not just a physical journey, but a spiritual one as well. In fact, many tombs were built along the riverbanks, close to the water, as a way to ensure that the deceased's soul would have a smooth journey into the afterlife. The gods and spirits that inhabited the Nile were not simply part of a distant mythological past, they were part of everyday life for the Egyptians. Their influence was felt in the rituals of daily life, from the offering of food to the gods to the careful navigation of the river itself. The belief in these gods and spirits was so ingrained in Egyptian culture that it shaped every aspect of their relationship with the Nile. It was not enough to simply navigate the river. One had to understand the forces at play within it, respect the spirits that watched over it, and honor the gods that governed its waters. The river was more than a means of transport. It was a sacred, living force that demanded both reverence and caution. The role of the gods and spirits in Egyptian life extended beyond the river. The Nile was seen as a divine pathway, not just for the living, but for the dead as well. The journey of the soul was as important as the journey of the body, and the river's waters were believed to guide both. From the life-giving floods of Hapi to the protective presence of Sobek, the gods of the Nile were intertwined with every aspect of Egyptian existence, from birth to death, from the mundane to the divine. The river was not simply a natural feature of the landscape. It was a living, breathing force that shaped the fate of all who lived along its banks. As we move forward, we now turn our attention to the myths and legends that further shaped the Egyptian psyche. These stories, often passed down through generations, helped the Egyptians make sense of the dangers they faced and the divine forces that governed their world. The gods and spirits of the Nile played a central role in these tales, shaping the culture, the rituals, and the very way Egyptians saw the world around them. What other secrets did the Nile hold in its depths, and what legends rose from its waters? Let us continue to explore the eerie and fascinating stories that the river whispered to those who listened closely. Ancient Egypt was haunted by something more terrifying than predators, something that never slept, something that stalked the travelers of the night. The Nile, while revered for its life-sustaining properties, was also home to a darker, more sinister side. Along its winding course, in the depths of its waters, and under the shadow of its banks, there existed an unseen world populated by ghosts, demons, and vengeful spirits, beings that were said to haunt the river, waiting for an unwary traveler to cross their path. These weren't just bedtime stories passed down through the generations. The Egyptians believed these entities were real, and they shaped the way people interacted with the Nile, especially after dark. The darkness of the river after sunset was not simply the absence of light, it was the absence of certainty. For the ancient Egyptians, the Nile was a sacred, unpredictable force, and nightfall revealed its hidden, malevolent aspects. Travelers who ventured onto the river after dark often carried with them more than just physical supplies. They brought with them prayers, amulets, and protective charms, hoping to shield themselves from the unseen dangers that could emerge from the river's depths. It was in this darkness that the spirits, long believed to haunt the waters, would come to life. These spirits were not the gentle, guiding souls of the afterlife, but malevolent forces, ghosts with unfinished business, or demons that lived in the murk and shadows of the Nile. The most terrifying of these spirits were the restless ghosts of the dead, who were thought to wander the river at night, unable to find peace. It was believed that the souls of the dead, once they had crossed into the afterlife, could return to the Nile, either seeking vengeance or trapped by their inability to move on. These spirits were said to appear as fleeting shadows along the riverbanks, or as faint figures on the horizon, just barely visible in the moonlight. Some stories tell of the wailing cries of these spirits, floating on the night air, warning travelers of the dangers ahead. To encounter these wandering souls was seen as a bad omen, and many believed that crossing paths with them could bring misfortune or even death. The Egyptians, ever cautious, believed that the presence of these spirits was a signal to turn back, to avoid the river's wrath, and not tempt the gods with an unnecessary journey. But the river's malevolent entities did not end with the ghosts of the dead. The Egyptians also believed in darker, more terrifying beings, demons, that lurked beneath the water's surface, waiting for the unwary to stray too far from the shore. These demons were thought to take on various forms, sometimes appearing as serpentine creatures, other times as shadowy figures that could be seen only in the corner of one's eye. Unlike the ghosts, whose presence was often considered a passive threat, these demons were actively hostile, ready to strike. Ancient texts tell of travelers hearing strange noises in the water, heavy splashes, deep growls, and the rush of unseen creatures. These were no ordinary animals. They were thought to be manifestations of the Nile's more dangerous, darker forces. One of the most feared demons of the Nile was Apep, the serpent god of chaos. Apep was often depicted as a giant, monstrous serpent who lay in wait in the underworld, determined to bring chaos to the world above. The Egyptians believed that Apep's spirit could be summoned through certain rituals, and he was seen as a direct threat to the safe passage of travelers on the Nile. It was said that if Apep appeared during the night, the travelers would be consumed by terror, lost forever to the river's dark depths. Despite the vigilance of their gods and the protection offered by prayers and offerings, the Egyptians knew that their journeys on the Nile were never without risk. There were forces in the world, both seen and unseen, that could turn a simple voyage into a nightmare. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of the Nile's nighttime dangers were the curses said to hang over certain stretches of the river. These were not just warnings or superstitions, but believed to be real and powerful forces capable of causing harm to those who violated the sacred laws of the river. It was said that certain areas of the Nile were cursed by the gods, either as punishment for past transgressions or as a consequence of a powerful entity's wrath. The Egyptians believed that if a traveler disrespected the river, whether by disturbing the resting places of the dead, committing a sacrilege near a sacred site, or failing to properly honor the river's gods, he could invoke the river's curse. The effects of these curses were said to be devastating. Travelers who ignored the warnings were believed to be driven mad, lost to madness and despair, or even struck down by sudden mysterious illness. Some accounts speak of boats simply disappearing in the night, never to be seen again, their crews lost to the wrath of the river's curse. Curses were also tied to the belief that certain gods or spirits resided in the waters, punishing those who dared to cross into their domains. The curse of the river was thought to be particularly potent if a traveler were to unknowingly disturb the sacred resting places of the dead. The Nile was not just a body of water, it was a sacred realm, one in which the living and the dead coexisted. The Egyptians believed that the gods controlled the forces of nature, and if one failed to offer respect to these divine entities, there was no telling what wrath they could summon from the waters. As unsettling as the idea of spirits and demons may seem, the Nile's dark side wasn't only present in folklore. The fear of these unseen entities shaped real-world actions. Many boatmen, before embarking on a nighttime journey, would perform rituals of protection. They would burn incense, whisper prayers to the gods, and wear amulets of protection against the evil spirits of the river. In some cases, ancient texts describe boatmen sacrificing small animals or leaving offerings at sacred riverbanks, believing that such acts would appease the spirits and ensure safe passage. The importance of these rituals cannot be understated, as they were an essential part of Egyptian culture, deeply tied to their belief systems. The legends of ghosts, demons, and curses that haunted the Nile were not merely stories, they were warnings. They were the ancient Egyptians' way of making sense of the unknown, of confronting the fears that arose when navigating the river in the dark. These tales reinforced the idea that the river was more than just a physical feature of the landscape. It was a realm filled with the supernatural. It was both a source of life and a passageway to the afterlife. And the Egyptians knew that to navigate it was to engage with forces far beyond human control. The threat of curses, the whispers of ghosts, and the lurking presence of demons ensured that every traveller approached the Nile after nightfall with a mixture of awe and fear. With the haunting legends of the Nile now revealed, we transition from the ancient beliefs that shaped Egyptian culture to the modern-day mystery of the river. What dangers does the Nile still hold today? What discoveries are still waiting to be made along its banks? And how does the ancient mythology continue to influence those who travel its waters? As we turn our attention to the present, we'll explore the legacy of the Nile and its enduring allure. The ancient dangers of the Nile are not gone, they've simply transformed. What does the modern Nile reveal about the ancient perils that still haunt it? Despite the sweeping advances in technology, engineering, and environmental management, the Nile remains a powerful and unpredictable force. While the grandeur of Egypt's ancient civilization may have faded into the past, the river that sustained it still flows, carrying with it echoes of the challenges that travelers, merchants, and explorers faced thousands of years ago. The once familiar, predictable Nile is now reshaped by the forces of modernity, but beneath its surface, the river still hides dangers that echo those of the past, reminding us that the power of nature is not easily tamed. In ancient times, the Nile was revered for its life-giving properties, its annual flooding creating fertile land for agriculture, and its steady flow supporting trade, transportation, and civilization. Yet, it was also feared for its unpredictable nature. Its floods could be both a blessing and a curse. Today, the Nile still plays a central role in Egypt's economy and culture, but the way it is experienced has changed dramatically. The construction of the Aswan High Dam in the 1960 seconds has fundamentally altered the river's character. The once regular, life-sustaining floods have been controlled and regulated, and the once untamed flow of the river is now subject to human management. This monumental project has given rise to a new set of challenges, as the dynamics of the river have shifted. The ability to control the flow of water has brought economic benefits, including the generation of hydroelectric power and the stabilization of agriculture. But it has also led to unintended consequences. The absence of seasonal flooding has caused environmental shifts. The fertile silt that once nourished the land with each flood is no longer deposited in the same way. Without these natural floods, the soil along the riverbanks has become less rich, requiring the use of artificial fertilizers to maintain agricultural productivity. Furthermore, the control of the river's water has led to a loss of the natural rhythm that governed the Nile for centuries. The river, once a living, changing force, is now more predictable, but in that predictability, much of the wild mystery of the Nile has been diminished. In the past, the annual flood was seen as both a gift and a reminder of the river's power. Now, the river's waters are controlled by human hands, and while this has brought stability to some, it has also raised concerns about the long-term health of the ecosystem and the persistence of ancient patterns that once defined the river's character. Another significant challenge that the Nile faces today is pollution. As Egypt's population has grown and its industrial activity has increased, the once pristine waters of the Nile have become contaminated by waste from agriculture, industry, and urban development. Chemicals, sewage, and other pollutants now flow into the river, threatening its ecosystem and the health of the millions of people who rely on it. The contamination of the Nile has not only impacted the environment, but it has also become a modern-day hazard for those who live along its banks. Fishing, once a way of life for many, is now dangerous in certain areas due to the toxic pollutants in the water. The pollution has also contributed to the spread of diseases, affecting both humans and wildlife. In many ways, the Nile's status as a symbol of life has been tainted by the reckless exploitation of its waters, a stark contrast to the reverence with which the ancient Egyptians held it. Yet, despite these modern challenges, the Nile still holds an undeniable grip on the imaginations of those who encounter it. The river's power remains an intrinsic part of Egypt's identity, and its presence continues to shape the lives of millions. For modern-day travelers and archaeologists, the river's mysteries are far from solved. The work of uncovering Egypt's hidden history continues, with the Nile serving as a guide to ancient sites, long-forgotten tombs, and hidden treasures buried beneath its waters. The river's waters still conceal secrets, and many explorers still journey along its banks in search of what has been lost to time. Despite the technological advancements that have changed the way the Nile is navigated, the river remains a place of danger and mystery. Modern safety measures, such as the construction of dams and the development of pollution control systems, have helped mitigate some of the river's physical hazards, but they have not entirely eradicated the risks. The Nile's currents, for instance, are still unpredictable, particularly in areas where the river widens or narrows. The modern boats that travel the river are far more advanced than the simple rafts and barges used by the ancient Egyptians, but they are not immune to the occasional mishap. The river's hidden channels and submerged obstacles still pose risks, and the unpredictable nature of the water means that no journey is ever completely safe. One of the most significant modern safety measures has been the use of radar and GPS technology, tools that were unimaginable in the ancient world. Today, travelers along the Nile can use advanced navigation systems to track their position and avoid hazardous areas. These modern tools, however, cannot completely replicate the intimate knowledge of the river that ancient navigators possessed. While the technology may help keep travelers on course, it is no substitute for the hands-on experience of a skilled navigator who knows the river's subtleties, the way the water moves, the hidden currents, and the landmarks that guide a safe passage. Despite these modern technologies, many still look to the river as a place of adventure and discovery. The Nile has always been a source of fascination for explorers, from the earliest known expeditions to the modern-day travelers who seek to trace the river's entire length. Archaeologists continue to uncover evidence of the ancient Egyptians' deep connection to the Nile, finding new tombs, temples, and relics hidden beneath its waters. The river's ability to conceal secrets has not diminished, and the search for answers to Egypt's mysteries continues, fueled by the allure of what may lie just beyond the reach of modern understanding. The Nile remains, in many ways, as enigmatic as it was to the ancient Egyptians. Its currents, its depths, and the stories it holds continue to captivate those who dare to explore its waters. As we examine the modern Nile and the challenges it faces, it becomes clear that the river's character has changed, but its mysteries and its power have not diminished. The river that shaped the rise of one of history's greatest civilizations still serves as a vital lifeline to millions, and it continues to hold secrets that have yet to be fully understood. In the next section, we will turn our attention to the adventurers and explorers who continue to seek out the Nile's mysteries, just as their ancient counterparts did. What draws them to this ancient river, and what dangers do they still face as they traverse its waters? How do they navigate the same risks that plagued the Egyptians thousands of years ago? These questions will guide our exploration of the modern adventurers who still find themselves captivated by the Nile's timeless allure. In a world of GPS and satellites, why are modern explorers still drawn to the same river that terrified ancient Egyptians? Could the Nile still be hiding secrets? Or is it the lure of danger that calls them back? Despite the advances in technology, the Nile retains an enigmatic pull, its ancient waters still teeming with mysteries that captivate adventurers, archaeologists, and thrill-seekers alike. For these modern explorers, the river is not just a historical artifact or a simple waterway. It is a living testament to the past, a bridge that connects the present with the ancient world. And despite the modern conveniences and tools at their disposal, the risks and challenges faced by those who venture on the Nile today are not so different from those that the Egyptians themselves confronted centuries ago. Today, the Nile draws explorers and adventurers from around the globe, all eager to uncover the hidden history that lies beneath its surface. From archaeological digs on the riverbanks to boat expeditions that trace its course from the Mediterranean to its southernmost reaches, the Nile continues to be a focal point for modern-day discovery. But these modern explorers are not just seeking out ancient ruins or long-lost artifacts. They are also confronting the same physical and environmental hazards that have haunted travelers for millennia. The risks of navigating the Nile today remain significant, though they have evolved in both form and nature. While the river's ancient mysteries still hold sway, modern travelers must contend with the dangers posed by pollution, unpredictable weather, and the unpredictable shifts in the river's flow. Even with the advantage of modern navigation tools, the Nile's waters can still be treacherous, and the echoes of ancient Egyptian fears remain ever present in the minds of those who venture out after dark. The river's unpredictable currents and hidden shoals continue to present a formidable challenge, even for those with the latest technology. One such explorer is Dr. Tariq Ahmed, an archaeologist who has spent the better part of his career uncovering ancient Egyptian sites along the Nile. The river is both a guide and a trap, he explains in an interview. Despite all the tools we have, from sonar mapping to satellite imagery, the Nile still surprises us. There are places that haven't been touched for thousands of years, and every so often, we discover something that shouldn't be there, something that wasn't recorded in any of the ancient texts. Dr. Ahmed's team uses state-of-the-art technology to scan the riverbed, but the unpredictability of the water still makes their work perilous. We've lost equipment to the river. Sometimes the currents are so strong that the boats can't hold their course, and we've had to pull back, he says. The very tools that allow modern archaeologists to make extraordinary discoveries also place them at risk, as the river's power remains just as unpredictable as it was in the days of the pharaohs. For modern boat expeditions, the dangers of the Nile remain ever present, even though navigation has improved dramatically since ancient times. GPS and radar systems have made it far easier to chart the course of the river, but the risks of the Nile's ancient currents have not disappeared. Adventurers like Daniel Carter, a British explorer who recently completed a full descent of the Nile, recount their experiences with a mixture of awe and trepidation. We were using all the latest technology, but the river's unpredictability still got to us, he recalls. There were moments when the current would suddenly change, or the fog would roll in so thick we couldn't see a few feet in front of us. There's a moment, late at night, when you realize that no amount of technology can really protect you from what's out there. For Carter, the allure of the Nile wasn't just about exploration, it was the thrill of navigating a river steeped in history and the eerie sense of connection to the past. You feel like you're walking in the footsteps of the ancient Egyptians, he says, reflecting on his journey. It's not just a river, it's a passage through time. But it's not just professional explorers who are drawn to the Nile. Tourists, too, find themselves enchanted by its beauty and mystery. Many travelers seek to experience the river as the Egyptians once did, taking traditional boat tours along the same waters that transported the pharaohs. These river cruises offer more than just a glimpse into Egypt's past. They allow tourists to feel the same sense of awe and trepidation that ancient Egyptians might have felt as they made their way through the darkened waters. However, these cruises are not without their risks. Tourists still report sightings of large creatures in the water, and though crocodiles and other predators have been mostly driven from the river, their remnants linger in the lore of the Nile. For those seeking a more thrilling experience, some boat tours take groups out at night, offering a truly immersive journey into the unknown. It's on these voyages that the air seems thick with the whispers of the past, where every ripple in the water feels like a reminder of the ancient dangers that once defined the Nile. Modern archaeologists, like Dr. Ahmed, also continue to uncover secrets from the past, with significant discoveries often hidden beneath the river's surface. One of the most exciting aspects of modern exploration is the ability to search for submerged cities, temples, and tombs that were once thought to be lost forever. Advances in underwater archaeology have allowed archaeologists to explore parts of the Nile that were previously unreachable, with underwater drones and sonar technology providing detailed images of ancient structures. These discoveries have revealed that the Nile, in many ways, is still as mysterious as it was to the ancient Egyptians. For example, the ruins of ancient temples and hidden statues have been uncovered at the bottom of the river, left behind by the shifting waters that once brought life to the land. The river's secrets are far from fully revealed, and the allure of these discoveries continues to draw researchers from around the world. The fascination with the Nile is not just about the hunt for ancient artifacts, it is about connecting the modern world to the ancient one. What makes the Nile so captivating is its ability to link the past with the present. The same river that witnessed the rise of one of the world's greatest civilizations still runs through the heart of Egypt today. For modern-day explorers and adventurers, the river represents not only a chance to uncover ancient history, but also a connection to a world that was both mystical and real, a world where gods, spirits, and dangers lurked in the shadows. The allure of the Nile is as much about its present as its past, and the sense of wonder and discovery that comes with navigating its waters continues to drive adventurers forward. As we move from the experiences of these modern explorers, we now turn our attention to the legacy of the ancient Egyptians and how the mysteries of the Nile continue to influence our understanding of their civilization. What did these ancient explorers know that we have yet to uncover? What hidden truths remain in the depths of the river, waiting for the next generation of adventurers to uncover them? The search for the Nile's secrets continues, and its allure remains as strong as ever. What if the Nile itself was hiding the greatest treasures of ancient Egypt, buried beneath its waters, waiting for the right moment to be discovered? For centuries, this question lingered in the minds of archaeologists, explorers, and historians alike, as the river's depths concealed secrets that were nearly lost to time. The Nile, with its ebb and flow, its waters both nurturing and perilous, has always been an integral part of Egyptian life, culture, and belief. It was the river that sustained their civilization, but it also hid away fragments of Egypt's past that could only be uncovered by the hands of those brave enough to seek them. Ancient temples, forgotten tombs, and relics of pharaohs and gods lie buried beneath its waters, awaiting discovery. The treasures hidden along the banks of the Nile are not confined to the grand monuments that line its shores, such as the Great Pyramids of Giza or the temples of Luxor. Beneath the surface of the river itself, the Nile has hidden some of Egypt's most extraordinary archaeological finds. In some cases, entire cities and temples, lost to the river's floods or the sands of time, have been uncovered in recent decades. One of the most significant discoveries made along the Nile was the unearthing of the submerged city of Heraklion, once an ancient port city and one of the most prosperous centers of Egypt. It lay hidden beneath the waters for over 1,000 years, submerged due to rising waters and shifting geography. When the city was rediscovered in 2000 by underwater archaeologists, it was as if an ancient world had been reborn. Statues of gods, huge stone structures, and even everyday objects were preserved in the silt, offering unprecedented insights into the lives of the people who lived there. Heraklion was just the beginning. As excavations along the Nile have continued, more and more treasures have been discovered, many of which have changed the way we understand ancient Egyptian civilization. In Luxor, the Valley of the Kings continues to yield some of Egypt's most awe-inspiring treasures. This royal burial site, which holds the tombs of many of Egypt's greatest pharaohs, including the famous tomb of Tutankhamun, has provided archaeologists with invaluable knowledge about the customs, rituals, and beliefs that defined Egyptian society. Inside these tombs, meticulously preserved artifacts, including golden masks, jewelry, and intricately decorated burial chambers, reveal the opulence and religious fervor of the Egyptian elite. These treasures were not simply material wealth. They were believed to be essential for the afterlife, accompanying the dead on their journey to the realm of Osiris, the god of the afterlife. Each artifact had a purpose, ensuring that the soul would be protected and provided for in the next world. The Great Pyramids of Giza, though perhaps the most famous of all Egypt's monuments, also hold secrets beneath their foundations. While much of the focus has been on the visible aspects of these monumental tombs, particularly the chambers and passageways that hold the remains of pharaohs like Khufu, archaeological research has revealed that the pyramid complex was surrounded by a network of hidden tombs and burial shafts. These tombs, filled with treasures for the afterlife, were often overlooked by early explorers, their locations lost to time. Only in recent years have modern archaeological techniques, including ground-penetrating radar and 3D imaging, uncovered these hidden chambers. The discovery of hidden tombs in the vicinity of the Great Pyramids has led to exciting finds, new objects, and burial artifacts that shed light on the daily lives of those who built the pyramids and the religious rituals that surrounded these monumental structures. But as wondrous as these discoveries are, they also come with their own risks and challenges. Much like the river itself, the act of uncovering Egypt's buried treasures is fraught with danger. The Nile's waters, once a life-giving force, have now become a silent guardian of ancient artifacts. While many treasures are found along the riverbanks, others lie buried beneath the silt and mud of the Nile itself. The process of retrieving them is not only physically demanding but also risky. Underwater excavations, though offering great potential for discovery, pose unique hazards. The murky waters of the Nile, combined with the shifting currents, make it difficult to see and navigate, often leading to accidents and the loss of precious artifacts. Additionally, the very act of excavation can jeopardize the preservation of these ancient finds. When an artifact is removed from its resting place, the risk of damage increases, and what was once pristine may be permanently altered by exposure to modern air and chemicals. In some cases, the challenge is not only the physical difficulty of uncovering these treasures, but the uncertainty of what exactly lies beneath the surface. Many of the ancient tombs and burial sites along the Nile were looted long before modern archaeologists had the chance to explore them. The treasures that once adorned the tombs of pharaohs and nobles were often taken by grave robbers, leaving only the remnants of their former glory. Even in the Valley of the Kings, where some of Egypt's most famous tombs have been discovered, looting was common. It was said that tomb robbers in ancient times had learned the secrets of the burial sites, knowing where to dig to find precious items like gold, jewelry, and statues. In some cases, tombs were sealed so tightly that only fragments of the original contents remained. The challenge for modern archaeologists is to piece together these fragments, uncovering the hidden stories of Egypt's past, while preserving what little remains. Despite these challenges, the pursuit of Egypt's hidden treasures continues to captivate archaeologists and adventurers alike. The mysteries of the Nile are far from solved, and each new discovery brings us closer to understanding the complexities of the ancient Egyptian world. What these treasures reveal is not just the grandeur of pharaohs, but also the intricacies of everyday life, how the Egyptians lived, worshipped, and prepared for the afterlife. In many ways, these finds give us a glimpse into the hearts and minds of a civilization that existed thousands of years ago, allowing us to better understand their beliefs, their practices, and their place in the larger tapestry of human history. As modern technology continues to advance, the future of Nile-based archaeology looks even more promising. Drones, advanced radar, and digital imaging are providing new ways to look beneath the surface, uncovering areas of the river that were once considered inaccessible. The river's depth holds more than just physical artifacts. It holds the potential to unlock stories of a civilization that shaped the world in profound ways. But as much as these modern tools can uncover, they also remind us of how much is still hidden. The Nile, like Egypt itself, is a land of secrets, its depths concealing wonders and dangers alike. Having explored the treasures hidden along the Nile, the next section will shift focus to the preservation of Egypt's rich history. As we look to the future, we must also confront the dangers of looting and the ongoing battle to protect these ancient artifacts from the threats that still loom in the modern world. The race to preserve Egypt's ancient heritage is as critical now as it has ever been, and it is a race against time. Even as we uncover Egypt's greatest secrets, others work tirelessly to plunder them. The Nile's treasures are still at risk. Who will protect them from being lost forever? The urgency of preserving Egypt's archaeological heritage has never been more pressing. While modern technology and the fascination with ancient Egypt drive unparalleled discoveries, they also invite an ever-growing threat: the destruction of priceless artifacts. Looting, both historical and contemporary, remains one of the greatest challenges to the preservation of Egypt's past, particularly in the context of the Nile's vast and mysterious reach. Looting is not a new problem. From the earliest days of Egypt's decline, tomb robbers have infiltrated the tombs of pharaohs and nobles, seeking treasures meant for the afterlife. These grave robbers knew no boundaries, digging deep into burial chambers in search of gold, jewelry, and religious relics. But in modern times, the scale of the problem has grown. Increased demand for ancient artifacts, coupled with the rise of illicit trafficking and the accessibility of modern tools, has led to a surge in illegal excavations and sales. Despite international laws and Egyptian efforts to protect its heritage, looting has become a thriving underground business, one that threatens to erase the very history that makes Egypt so unique. The Nile, which once served as a life-giving river, now bears witness to the ongoing theft of its treasures. Modern-day looters, often using advanced technology like metal detectors, underwater excavation tools, and even dynamite, are able to access areas that were previously unreachable. Some of Egypt's most famous sites, such as the Valley of the Kings, have become magnets for thieves. The allure of uncovering gold and ancient relics has tempted many, from local looters to international buyers who are willing to pay exorbitant sums for a piece of Egypt's past. These thieves do not care about history or cultural significance. Their only goal is the immediate profit from artifacts that hold no real value to them beyond monetary gain. The illegal trade of antiquities has led to the destruction of countless archaeological sites. The rapid pace of looting means that once a tomb or site is disturbed, its original contents are often scattered, damaged, or lost forever. Even in cases where looters are apprehended, the damage has already been done. The very process of excavation without scientific rigor destroys the context in which these treasures were found, making it impossible for archaeologists to fully understand the culture, beliefs, and practices of ancient Egypt. The grave robbers' acts of greed not only rob the country of its heritage, but also deprive future generations of the opportunity to learn from these artifacts. In response to this threat, Egypt's government, in partnership with international organizations, has stepped up efforts to protect its cultural legacy. One of the key players in the fight against looting is the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities, which works tirelessly to secure excavation sites, protect museum collections, and combat the illicit trafficking of artifacts. However, given the scale of the problem and the vastness of the river's banks and ancient sites, even the most well-equipped authorities are faced with challenges. The constant battle is one of education, awareness, and enforcement. Modern conservationists and archaeologists are faced with the delicate task of balancing discovery with preservation. Every excavation, every new find, must be carefully handled to ensure that it can be studied and preserved without damaging the integrity of the site. The process of preserving artifacts is painstaking and time-consuming. Experts in conservation work tirelessly to stabilize fragile objects, sometimes using innovative techniques to reverse the effects of centuries of degradation. From ancient scrolls to gold jewelry, from fragile statues to intricate tomb murals, every piece must be preserved for future generations. Modern tools like 3D scanning, digital imaging, and laser cleaning have revolutionized the way artifacts are conserved, allowing for more precise, less invasive restoration methods. But conservation is not just about physical preservation, it is also about context. The ancient Egyptians believed in the sacred nature of burial and the afterlife. Their tombs were not merely storage spaces for material wealth. They were sanctified areas where objects were meant to accompany the deceased on their journey to the afterlife. The Nile's treasures, therefore, are more than just relics of a bygone civilization. They are sacred objects imbued with spiritual meaning. The ancient Egyptians took great care in crafting these objects, understanding that they had a role to play in a divine and eternal narrative. To preserve these artifacts is not only to protect their physical form, but also to honor the spiritual beliefs that gave them meaning. However, preserving Egypt's heritage is not just a matter for archaeologists and conservationists. It is a cultural and moral responsibility shared by the global community. The destruction of Egypt's artifacts affects not only Egypt but the entire world. Ancient Egypt's contributions to art, architecture, religion, and science have shaped the course of human history. Its influence can be seen in cultures and civilizations around the world. Protecting Egypt's treasures, therefore, is a collective effort, one that requires international cooperation, education, and commitment to the preservation of history. Despite these efforts, the Nile's treasures remain at risk. The allure of discovery, both in the legitimate search for knowledge and the darker motivations of looters, continues to drive the threat of destruction. The Nile, once a symbol of life and death, remains a place of both awe and peril. It is a river that has witnessed the rise and fall of great civilizations and holds the secrets of those who lived and died by its banks. But these secrets are fragile. As we continue to uncover Egypt's greatest treasures, we must also confront the responsibility of protecting them. As we move forward from the discussion of preserving Egypt's past, we now turn to the broader implications of these treasures for our understanding of ancient Egypt. How have the discoveries along the Nile reshaped our perceptions of their civilization? What new insights have been gleaned from these relics that challenge our previous understanding? The next section will dive into the most significant discoveries made along the Nile, examining how these treasures have reshaped the study of ancient Egypt and continue to reveal new aspects of a civilization long past. Buried beneath the sands of time, a lost tomb sat undisturbed for thousands of years. What secrets did it hold, and why did the Nile guard them so fiercely? The discovery of lost tombs along the Nile stands as one of the greatest achievements in the field of archaeology. For centuries, the ancient Egyptians' tombs, temples, and treasures were hidden from the world, either lost to time, hidden beneath shifting sands, or submerged under the river's ever-changing flow. But with the persistence and ingenuity of archaeologists and explorers, some of Egypt's most awe-inspiring secrets have been uncovered, providing unprecedented insights into their civilization's beliefs, practices, and preparations for the afterlife. One of the most famous and significant discoveries in modern archaeology was the unearthing of King Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922 by British archaeologist Howard Carter. Tutankhamun, often referred to as the Boy King, had been largely forgotten by history. His reign was brief, and his tomb had not been mentioned in the ancient texts that catalogued the burial places of the pharaohs. For years, scholars believed his tomb had been lost to the ravages of time and looting. But when Carter and his team discovered the tomb in the Valley of the Kings, the world was stunned. Hidden in a small, relatively unnoticed tomb in the valley's Kings Valley, Carter uncovered an untouched burial site containing over 5,000 priceless artifacts, including gold, jewelry, statues, and the famous golden death mask of Tutankhamun. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb marked a turning point in Egyptology. The sheer wealth and artistry of the artifacts provided an extraordinary window into the life and death of a pharaoh, and revealed much about the spiritual beliefs and rituals associated with death in ancient Egypt. The tomb, though small compared to others in the Valley of the Kings, was an unparalleled time capsule, giving archaeologists and historians a detailed look at the burial practices of Egypt's New Kingdom period. It was as if the tomb itself had been left undisturbed, hidden away from grave robbers and the passage of time, awaiting the right moment to reveal its secrets. The treasures found in Tutankhamun's tomb were not just extravagant symbols of wealth, they had a deeper, spiritual significance. The ancient Egyptians believed that the afterlife was a continuation of life on Earth, and they prepared for it meticulously. Tutankhamun's tomb was filled with objects meant to serve him in the afterlife: chariots, weapons, furniture, and even clothing. These items were not meant simply for burial. They were essential tools for the journey the deceased would undertake after death. The tomb's contents revealed how important the river was to the Egyptians' beliefs about death and the afterlife. The Nile, with its life-giving water, was thought to play a crucial role in the journey of the soul, offering a passageway to the afterlife, a theme that echoed throughout the design of royal tombs along the river's banks. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb sparked renewed interest in Egyptology and led to further excavations in the Valley of the Kings, a burial site that has yielded countless treasures. This valley, located on the west bank of the Nile, near Luxor, has long been considered the final resting place of pharaohs and powerful nobles. The tombs in this area, though often plundered in antiquity, still hold remarkable artifacts that continue to shed light on Egyptian funerary practices. Among the most notable finds were the tombs of Ramses II, one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs, and that of Seti I, Ramses' father, whose tomb is considered one of the most beautifully decorated and well-preserved of all. Yet, even as the tombs of the Valley of the Kings continue to yield treasures, they also reveal the darker side of Egyptian history, the devastating effects of grave robbing. Even in antiquity, thieves had long plundered the tombs of the powerful, taking priceless artifacts and desecrating sacred burial sites. The discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun, undisturbed by robbers, was extraordinary for this very reason. The contents of the tomb were intact, offering a rare and untainted glimpse into the rituals surrounding Egypt's burial customs. For centuries, this valley had been a target for tomb robbers, yet the treasures of Tutankhamun, hidden for so long, had been protected by the tomb's obscurity, guarded by the very river that once connected Egypt's past with its present. The Valley of the Kings is not the only site where Egypt's buried past has been uncovered. The area surrounding Luxor, once known as Thebes, is another rich archaeological treasure trove. The massive temples of Karnak and Luxor, dedicated to the god Amun-Ra, are among the largest and most impressive religious structures ever built. These temples were not only places of worship but also symbols of Egypt's immense power and grandeur. Yet even here, beneath the towering columns and grand statues, are treasures waiting to be discovered, some of which remain hidden, protected by the sands of time. Excavations in this area have uncovered everything from ceremonial artifacts to inscriptions that provide insight into the daily lives and spiritual practices of the ancient Egyptians. But these discoveries, while awe-inspiring, also come with their own set of challenges. Each archaeological dig brings with it the potential for uncovering not only treasures, but also the delicate remnants of a civilization that has long since passed. The excavation process itself can be a race against time, as environmental factors, human activity, and looting continue to threaten Egypt's priceless heritage. The Nile, which has sustained Egypt for millennia, also serves as a reminder of the impermanence of human endeavor. The river's ever-changing flow has, in some cases, hidden or destroyed what we can never hope to find again. The modern-day archaeologists who work along the Nile face numerous challenges. Many of the sites, despite their historical importance, are not protected as they should be, and many artifacts still make their way into the hands of thieves or private collectors. However, the work of archaeologists, historians, and conservationists continues to ensure that the greatest secrets of ancient Egypt are not lost forever. With the help of cutting-edge technology like ground-penetrating radar, drone imaging, and advanced preservation techniques, the discoveries made today offer new perspectives on Egypt's remarkable civilization. These modern tools allow for the careful excavation and documentation of sites that were once too delicate or too difficult to reach. Yet even as we uncover these treasures, the question remains, what else is still hidden along the Nile? What other tombs, temples, or artifacts lie beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered? The Nile is a river of mystery and revelation, and as modern explorers continue to delve into its depths, there is always the sense that we have only scratched the surface of what it has to offer. As we move forward, we now ask a deeper question. Are there still secrets buried along the Nile that have yet to be revealed? As we turn the page to the next section, we will explore the speculative side of archaeology. What could still be waiting beneath the river's waters, waiting for the right moment and the right explorers to bring it into the light? Despite thousands of years of searching, the Nile still keeps its most guarded secrets. What could be hidden beneath its waters, waiting to be uncovered? For centuries, the Nile has been both a source of life and a realm of mystery. While much has been discovered along its banks, grand temples, vast tombs, and treasures of unimaginable value, there remains a vast unknown that continues to elude even the most persistent archaeologists and explorers. The river's depths still hide civilizations that have vanished from history, tombs that have yet to be found, and artifacts that challenge our understanding of ancient Egypt. Despite all the advances in modern technology and excavation techniques, the Nile still whispers its secrets, refusing to reveal everything. One of the most tantalizing mysteries of the Nile concerns the existence of lost cities, long forgotten by history but believed to be hidden along its banks. Some scholars theorize that entire settlements, perhaps even large cities, could be buried beneath the river's waters or the surrounding desert sands. The ancient Egyptian capital of Thonis Herakleion, mentioned by ancient Greek historians, was thought to be a mythical city until it was rediscovered in 2000 off the coast of Egypt in the Mediterranean Sea. This underwater city, once a major port and center of commerce, had been lost for over 1,000 years. Its sudden reappearance fueled theories that there may be other cities, similarly submerged, waiting to be uncovered. The Nile, which once flowed through cities like Thebes and Memphis, could be hiding remnants of civilizations whose names and stories have long been forgotten. Equally tantalizing is the possibility that undiscovered pyramids still lie along the Nile, hidden beneath the sands, or even submerged beneath its waters. Though the Great Pyramids of Giza are the most famous, Egypt is home to many other pyramid structures, scattered across the country, each one a testament to the pharaoh's belief in the afterlife. Some archaeologists believe that there could be more pyramids waiting to be found in less explored regions, possibly near the Nile's less traversed stretches. Recent satellite scans and advanced technology, like infrared mapping and radar imaging, have revealed anomalies in the landscape that suggest there are hidden structures below the Earth's surface. These findings have prompted speculation that there may be undiscovered tombs, or even entire pyramids, still lying in wait to be uncovered by future explorers. The allure of finding an entirely new pyramid, untouched by time or looting, continues to drive modern-day treasure hunters and archaeologists to explore areas that have never been thoroughly excavated. The mystery of hidden tombs is also central to the continuing fascination with the Nile's secrets. The Valley of the Kings, where many of Egypt's greatest pharaohs were buried, is considered one of the richest archaeological sites in the world. Yet, despite decades of excavations, there are still empty chambers and undiscovered tombs believed to lie somewhere in the valley. The tomb of Cleopatra, one of Egypt's most famous rulers, has never been found, and many theorists believe it could be hidden somewhere along the Nile, possibly in the vicinity of Alexandria. Some researchers speculate that Cleopatra's tomb may have been deliberately concealed or lost in antiquity due to the political turmoil of her reign, but no definitive evidence has emerged. Similarly, the tomb of Alexander the Great, whose legacy in Egypt was intertwined with that of Cleopatra, may also lie hidden somewhere along the river, waiting for the right discovery to emerge. Another unexplained mystery of the Nile involves the discovery of artifacts that defy simple explanation. While many of Egypt's treasures, such as golden statues and intricately carved jewelry, fit neatly into the known history of the civilization, there are some objects that challenge traditional understanding. For example, several artifacts have been found in ancient Egyptian tombs that don't seem to fit with the historical timeline of Egypt. Items resembling advanced technology, like small models of flying machines or intricately designed tools that appear centuries ahead of their time, have led to speculation about Egypt's relationship with unknown or lost knowledge. Some claim that these objects are evidence of a forgotten, advanced civilization, one that may have existed in Egypt long before the known dynastic period. Whether these artifacts are misunderstood, misinterpreted, or genuinely part of a lost, unknown culture is still a subject of intense debate. Despite the evidence for these tantalizing theories, the mystery of the Nile remains unresolved. With every excavation, new questions arise, pushing the boundaries of what we know about ancient Egypt. Modern explorers and archaeologists continue to push forward, using cutting-edge technology to scan the riverbed and the surrounding landscape, hoping to reveal hidden treasures and lost cities that may hold the key to understanding Egypt's past. Drones, sonar mapping, and ground-penetrating radar have opened up new possibilities for discovering what lies beneath the surface. But the river remains a vast and unpredictable environment, often shifting in ways that make finding answers difficult. For those who venture into this unknown, the Nile's mysteries are both an intellectual challenge and a source of excitement. Every new discovery brings a rush of exhilaration, as if uncovering a lost piece of the puzzle that could change our understanding of history. At the same time, the mystery of what remains hidden beneath the Nile's waters creates a sense of anticipation, an ongoing quest for the unknown. Archaeologists and adventurers alike have long been drawn to Egypt's ancient landscape, not just for the glory of discovery, but for the thrill of uncovering something that has been hidden for millennia. It is this allure that continues to fuel modern exploration, with the Nile serving as both a source of fascination and a symbol of the past's enduring mysteries. Even as we continue to uncover new artifacts, cities, and tombs, the Nile remains an untamed wilderness of secrets. Every discovery leads to new questions, new possibilities, and new mysteries. Will the Nile ever fully give up all its secrets? Or will it remain, forever, a river of mysteries, keeping some things hidden beneath its waters, forever guarding the greatest treasures of ancient Egypt? As we move forward from these unsolved riddles, the narrative will shift toward exploring the cultural and spiritual significance of the Nile and how the beliefs that shaped Egyptian society continue to influence our understanding of their civilization. The Nile, after all, was more than just a river. It was a bridge to the divine, a lifeline to the afterlife, and an integral part of Egypt's eternal legacy. For the Egyptians, the Nile wasn't just a river, it was the very bridge between the living and the divine. But what role did it play in their journey to the afterlife? The Nile was the heart of ancient Egypt, not just as a source of life-sustaining water, but as a sacred entity with profound spiritual significance. It was more than a physical waterway that connected Upper and Lower Egypt. It was a divine pathway that carried souls from the world of the living to the realm of the gods. This belief shaped every aspect of Egyptian culture, from the grand religious temples built along its banks to the rituals surrounding death and the afterlife. The Nile's role in these practices was so deeply ingrained in Egyptian society that it became inseparable from their very understanding of life, death, and rebirth. At the center of this spiritual understanding was the Nile's annual flooding, a phenomenon that the Egyptians saw not as a natural occurrence, but as a divine blessing. Each year, the river would rise and overflow its banks, depositing nutrient-rich silt onto the land, which created a fertile environment for agriculture. This cycle of flood and renewal was seen as a reflection of the cycle of life and death. The annual inundation of the Nile was closely associated with the god Hapi, the deity of the river's flooding, who was revered as a symbol of abundance and fertility. Hapi's role in Egyptian mythology was so central that he was often depicted as a figure with a large, rounded belly, symbolizing the bounty of the river's waters. The flooding of the Nile was understood as a direct gift from the gods, ensuring the prosperity of the land and the people. To the Egyptians, it wasn't just a natural event, it was a manifestation of divine favor. The Nile's annual flooding was not just a physical event, but a spiritual one. It was believed that the river's rise was a direct connection to the gods themselves. Hapi, as the god of the inundation, was honored in religious festivals and offerings. His flooding was seen as a sacred act, and the fertility it brought to the land was interpreted as the god's way of renewing life. In this sense, the river was more than a natural force. It was a manifestation of divine power, a conduit through which the gods communicated with the people of Egypt. The rising of the river was a reaffirmation of Egypt's divine connection to the gods, and it was considered a time of spiritual renewal as much as a time of physical growth. But the Nile's spiritual significance didn't end with the living. The river was also a vital part of the Egyptian belief in the afterlife. Playing a crucial role in the journey of the soul, Egyptians believed that death was not the end, but rather a transition to a new realm, the afterlife. The journey to the afterlife was one of great importance, and the Nile, as a divine pathway, was integral to this passage. In the afterlife, the soul was believed to travel across the Nile to reach the underworld, where the soul would face judgment before the god Osiris. The river, therefore, wasn't just a physical barrier, it was a spiritual boundary between life and death. The Egyptians believed that the Nile itself carried the soul on this journey, ferrying it across the waters to the realm of the dead. This belief in the Nile as a divine path to the afterlife was reflected in the way Egyptians approached death and burial. Tombs and burial sites were constructed with the belief that the dead would need to journey across the river to reach the afterlife. This journey was central to Egyptian funerary practices, and the layout of tombs and burial sites along the Nile reflected this. Many of Egypt's most famous tombs, including those in the Valley of the Kings, were located near the Nile, symbolizing the connection between the living and the dead. The proximity of these tombs to the river underscored the belief that the Nile was the pathway the soul would take on its journey to the afterlife. Funerary rituals, too, were centered around the idea of the Nile as a divine conduit. Elaborate burial rites were performed to ensure the safe passage of the soul across the river. These rites involved not only the physical preparation of the body, but also spiritual rituals, including prayers and offerings, which were intended to protect the soul as it made its journey. The deceased would be given a variety of goods, both material and spiritual, to assist them in their afterlife. These included food offerings, amulets, and statues, all meant to provide comfort and protection on the journey. The Nile was not just a river of the living, it was a river of the dead, and its waters played a pivotal role in the transition from one world to the next. The sacred nature of the Nile and its role in the journey of the soul was also reflected in the construction of temples along its banks. Temples were not only places of worship, but also sites that reinforced the idea of the river as a divine pathway. The great temples of Karnak, Luxor, and Philae, for example, were built on the banks of the Nile and were designed to honor the gods associated with the river, including Hapi and Osiris. These temples were often positioned so that their doors faced the river, symbolizing the flow of divine energy from the Nile into the sacred spaces of worship. The temples were also designed to reflect the journey of the soul, with their intricate carvings and statues illustrating the passage from life to death, and the rituals of worship performed inside mirrored the sacred passage the soul would take on its journey. The spiritual and religious significance of the Nile was so deeply embedded in Egyptian culture that it influenced not only their religious practices, but their understanding of the cosmos itself. The river's flow, with its cyclical nature of flooding and retreating, mirrored the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. To the Egyptians, the Nile was not just a physical entity, but a manifestation of cosmic order. It was the embodiment of Ma'at, the ancient Egyptian concept of truth, balance, and order. In this sense, the Nile was seen as the ultimate symbol of divine balance, a force that sustained life while simultaneously guiding the soul to the afterlife. As we shift from the divine role of the Nile to its practical influence on burial and funerary practices, we see how the river shaped not only the beliefs of the Egyptians, but also their actions in life and death. The preparation for the afterlife was a central aspect of Egyptian culture, and the Nile, as a divine pathway, played an essential role in this spiritual journey. The river's role in Egyptian religious practice was inseparable from its role in daily life, linking the living and the dead in a continuous cycle of renewal and transformation. Having explored the spiritual and religious significance of the Nile, the next section will delve into how these beliefs shaped the funerary practices of the Egyptians, particularly their elaborate burial rituals, tombs, and the sacredness of the riverbank in their approach to death and the afterlife. These practices, both grand and intricate, offer us a deeper understanding of the importance of the Nile not just as a physical river, but as a sacred, divine force that governed all aspects of Egyptian life. To the ancient Egyptians, death was not an end, but a journey, one that was guided by the very river that gave them life. Could the Nile have been the final test before entering the afterlife? For centuries, the Nile was not only a physical boundary, but also a spiritual pathway, deeply woven into the religious fabric of Egyptian society. Its waters symbolized both life and death, and it was believed that the river itself played a critical role in the soul's passage to the afterlife. The Egyptians didn't merely view death as a final destination. It was a journey, one that required careful preparation, profound rituals, and divine assistance to navigate the unknown. Central to this journey was the belief that the Nile's waters would guide the soul across the threshold into the realm of the gods, ensuring that the deceased reached eternal peace. The Egyptian funerary practices were elaborate and rich in symbolism, as they were driven by the belief that the soul would face challenges, judgment, and trials after death. For the ancient Egyptians, the journey after death was not linear. It was a perilous path that involved crossing the Nile, passing through underworld realms, and facing the judgment of Osiris, the god of the afterlife. The Nile played a key role in this process, acting as a metaphorical and physical boundary between life and death. It was believed that the soul's journey began when the deceased crossed the river's waters, a process that was closely tied to the concept of rebirth and resurrection, a theme that ran through many of Egypt's religious practices. The Egyptians' elaborate burial rituals were meant to ensure that the soul successfully crossed the Nile's waters and entered the afterlife. One of the most important elements of the burial process was the preparation of the body, which was mummified to preserve it for the journey. The mummification process was an intricate procedure, involving the removal of internal organs, dehydration of the body, and wrapping it in linen bandages. This process was believed to preserve the physical body for eternity, allowing the soul to return to it and continue its existence in the afterlife. The mummified body was then placed in a tomb, often accompanied by grave goods such as food, jewelry, and objects meant to provide comfort and protection to the deceased in the next world. A key component of the burial process was the use of the Times Book of the Dead, *, a collection of spells and instructions meant to guide the soul through its journey in the afterlife. These texts were often placed in the tomb with the deceased, inscribed on papyrus or the walls of the tomb itself. The Times Book of the Dead Times was a critical tool for the soul, providing detailed directions on how to navigate the underworld, avoid traps and dangers, and ultimately pass the judgment of Osiris. One of the key moments in this journey was the weighing of the heart, where the deceased's heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. If the heart was found to be pure, the soul could continue its journey. If not, it was devoured by the monster Amit, forever lost. The Times Book of the Dead Times contained spells that invoked the gods to assist in this trial, ensuring a safe passage to the afterlife. As the deceased's journey progressed, the Nile's role as a divine pathway to the afterlife became increasingly apparent. The tombs of the ancient Egyptians were not only burial sites but spiritual gateways. Many tombs, especially those built for pharaohs and high-ranking officials, were constructed along the banks of the Nile, reinforcing the belief that the river played an essential role in the soul's journey. These tombs were elaborate, with intricate decorations and inscriptions that depicted the journey of the soul, the gods, and the deceased's personal trials and tribulations. The tombs often included scenes of the deceased sailing across the Nile in a boat, symbolizing the soul's voyage across the waters and its eventual arrival in the afterlife. The boat itself was a powerful symbol of the soul's journey, a vessel of both death and rebirth, carrying the deceased safely from one world to the next. In addition to the Times Book of the Dead *, The deceased was often buried with offerings intended to sustain them on their journey. These offerings, including food, drink, clothing, and tools, were believed to provide everything needed for the afterlife. It was common to include small statuettes or shabti times figures in the tomb, which were thought to serve as servants for the deceased in the afterlife. These figurines were inscribed with spells from the Times Book of the Dead Times to ensure that the deceased would have all they needed to face the trials of the afterlife. In many tombs, paintings and carvings depicted scenes of the deceased partaking in these offerings, often shown in the form of banquets or rituals that ensured the soul was cared for on its journey. The burial grounds along the Nile, especially in sacred regions like Thebes and Saqqara, were considered hallowed spaces where the living could connect with the divine. The ancient Egyptians believed that by being buried near the river, the deceased were closer to the gods and that their souls could more easily cross over to the afterlife. Many pharaohs and high priests chose to build their tombs near the Nile to be as close as possible to this divine river. The proximity to the river symbolized a closer connection to the divine forces of the underworld, facilitating the soul's journey. This belief in the river's role as a divine passage is also evident in the design of the pyramids. While the Great Pyramids of Giza are the most famous examples, pyramids across Egypt were constructed with the belief that the river's waters would carry the soul to the heavens. The pyramid's shape itself, with its pointed top, symbolized the soul's ascent to the gods. The construction of these monumental tombs along the Nile underscored the river's sacred significance as both a source of life and a path to eternal existence. The connection between the Nile and death was not just metaphorical. In many tombs, the Nile was directly invoked as part of the burial rituals. Some tombs featured depictions of the deceased traveling along the river, accompanied by boats and oarsmen as they sailed toward the afterlife. The imagery of the river's current, carrying the soul forward, reinforced the idea that the Nile was not just a physical barrier between the living and the dead, but a divine bridge connecting these two realms. The river, as both a giver of life and a pathway to death, embodied the cyclical nature of existence in the Egyptian worldview. As we look at the central role the Nile played in burial and funerary rituals, it becomes clear that the river was seen not just as a geographical feature, but as a divine force that permeated every aspect of Egyptian spirituality. The Nile was more than a river, it was a sacred pathway, guiding the souls of the deceased to the afterlife, and ensuring that the cycle of life, death, and rebirth continued in a harmonious and divinely ordained manner. Having examined the vital role of the Nile in Egyptian burial rituals and the afterlife, the next section will delve into how these spiritual beliefs influenced the governance and control of Egypt, particularly in terms of how the river shaped the power structures, resource management, and the divine authority of the pharaohs. From the reign of the pharaohs to the use of the Nile in their construction projects, the river was not only a physical asset but a symbol of royal power and divine legitimacy. Thousands of years have passed since the ancient Egyptians first worshipped the Nile, but today, the river still pulses with the same life-giving energy. What does the future hold for this eternal river? The Nile, the lifeblood of Egypt, has long been more than just a river. It is the embodiment of Egypt's past, present, and future. Its influence has shaped every aspect of Egyptian civilization, from the daily rhythms of agriculture to the grand theological and political structures that defined one of the world's oldest and most enduring civilizations. As we reflect on Egypt's legacy, it becomes clear that the Nile's significance transcends time, continuing to shape the identity, economy, and culture of modern Egypt in ways that are deeply rooted in the ancient past. The legacy of ancient Egypt cannot be separated from the Nile. For over 3,000 years, the river provided not only the physical resources necessary for survival, water, food, transportation, and trade, but also the spiritual and philosophical frameworks that guided Egyptian society. The river's annual flooding, which brought fertile silt to the land, was seen as a divine blessing and became central to Egypt's agricultural practices. The Egyptians revered the Nile not just for the material wealth it provided, but for its spiritual symbolism, representing the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. The river's constant presence in Egyptian life was inseparable from the Egyptian worldview, which saw the natural world as intertwined with the divine. The Nile was not simply a means of survival, it was a sacred force that defined the rhythm of Egyptian existence. Today, the Nile continues to play a central role in Egyptian culture, even as the country has entered the modern age. The river remains crucial to the nation's identity, economy, and way of life. Over 95% of Egypt's population lives along the Nile or in its immediate vicinity, and the river continues to provide vital water resources for agriculture, industry, and drinking water. Despite modern advances in technology, irrigation, and water management, Egypt's dependence on the Nile remains as strong as ever. The river still sustains the country's agricultural industry, particularly in the production of crops like wheat, cotton, and rice, which are essential to the nation's food supply and economy. The Nile's seasonal flooding, once a natural phenomenon, has been regulated by the Aswan High Dam, but the river's role in maintaining the fertility of Egypt's land endures. The Nile's spiritual significance also endures in modern Egypt. While Egypt has undergone significant cultural and religious changes over the centuries, the river remains a symbol of life, fertility, and continuity. The reverence for the Nile can still be seen in the cultural and religious practices of the Egyptian people. For example, the annual celebration of the Wafa el-Nil festival, which takes place each August, marks the arrival of the river's floodwaters and celebrates the life-giving properties of the Nile. The festival is a reminder of the river's central role in Egyptian society and its enduring cultural importance. Even in today's modern world, the Nile is seen not just as a physical feature of the landscape, but as a divine force that connects the past with the present. In addition to its cultural significance, the Nile's role in Egypt's economy continues to be of paramount importance. The river remains essential for Egypt's energy needs, providing hydroelectric power through the Aswan High Dam, which was completed in 1970. The dam, one of the largest and most impressive engineering feats in the world, has enabled Egypt to harness the power of the Nile's flow to generate electricity, providing a stable and renewable source of energy for the country. The Nile also remains a critical transportation route, with ships and boats regularly traveling along its waters, carrying goods between Egypt's major cities and ports. The river facilitates trade, tourism, and commerce, making it an economic lifeline for the nation. Yet, even as the Nile continues to shape modern Egypt, it faces significant challenges. Issues such as water scarcity, population growth, and environmental degradation threaten the river's long-term sustainability. The construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, GERD, on the Blue Nile, which began in 2011, has sparked tensions between Egypt and Ethiopia, as Egypt relies on the Nile for about 90% of its freshwater needs. While the GERD is seen as a source of economic development for Ethiopia, it raises concerns about the impact on Egypt's water supply and its ability to maintain its agricultural output. The Nile's future is now entangled with questions of resource distribution, environmental conservation, and international diplomacy. The river that once symbolized harmony and abundance now stands as a symbol of the complex challenges that come with managing shared resources in a modern, interconnected world. The Nile's significance extends far beyond Egypt's borders. The river has been central to the development of civilizations in northeastern Africa and the Middle East, and it has been a key point of connection between the cultures of Africa, the Mediterranean, and the Arab world. The Nile's flow through Egypt has made it a crossroads of civilizations, where ideas, goods, and cultures have mingled for millennia. The river continues to be a vital route for international trade and tourism, with millions of visitors flocking to Egypt each year to experience its ancient wonders. The legacy of ancient Egypt, tied so intrinsically to the Nile, continues to capture the imaginations of people around the world, inspiring research, exploration, and admiration. The Nile's enduring influence is also evident in its representation in art, literature, and popular culture. From the earliest depictions of the river in ancient Egyptian tombs and temples to its portrayal in modern media, the Nile remains a symbol of power, mystery, and timeless beauty. Its winding path through Egypt, its lush banks, and its life-giving waters have inspired poets, artists, and filmmakers for centuries. The river's role in shaping Egyptian civilization and its continued presence in the cultural imagination ensures that it will remain a central figure in the world's collective consciousness. As we look to the future, the Nile's continued importance to Egypt is clear, but its legacy is also a reminder of the delicate balance between progress and preservation. The challenges facing the Nile in the modern era, environmental pressures, geopolitical conflicts, and resource scarcity, require careful management and international cooperation. The river, which has sustained Egypt for thousands of years, is not just a symbol of Egypt's past but also its future. The way Egypt responds to the challenges of the Nile will shape its path forward, just as the river has shaped the country's identity for millennia. Having reflected on the enduring legacy of the Nile and its continued role in modern Egypt, we now turn to the broader questions surrounding the river's mysteries. Despite centuries of exploration, the Nile still holds secrets that have yet to be uncovered. What will the future hold for this eternal river? As we look to the future, the Nile's legacy continues to captivate and challenge us, leaving us with lingering questions about the unknown and the mysteries that still await discovery along its sacred banks. As the modern world advances, could we finally uncover the Nile's deepest secrets? What mysteries are still hidden beneath its surface, waiting for the right moment to emerge? Despite centuries of exploration, Egypt's greatest river continues to hold its secrets close. The Nile, which has nourished civilizations for millennia, still conceals lost tombs, forgotten cities, and untold treasures in its waters and along its banks. While significant discoveries have been made, from the treasures of Tutankhamun to submerged cities like Heracleion, the question remains, what more could the Nile be hiding, waiting to be uncovered by the right combination of technology, patience, and intuition? For centuries, the world has been fascinated by the idea of lost civilizations buried beneath the Nile's banks. The river, once seen as the cradle of civilization, has witnessed the rise and fall of countless kingdoms, dynasties, and empires. But there are still gaps in our understanding of Egypt's past, and many scholars believe that the Nile may hold the key to solving some of the greatest historical puzzles. Speculation about lost cities continues to intrigue archaeologists, with some theorists suggesting that the ancient capital of Thonis Heracleion is not the only major city to have been swallowed by the river. The city of Tanis, once a thriving center of commerce and power, was also believed to be lost to time, and some researchers believe that its ruins could still be hidden beneath the Nile's waters. If such cities exist, they may hold clues to Egypt's political and cultural evolution, and their discoveries could reshape our understanding of Egypt's ancient world. Similarly, the search for undiscovered tombs continues to captivate the imagination of archaeologists. The Valley of the Kings, home to the tombs of Egypt's most famous pharaohs, remains a site of intense exploration. Though many tombs have been uncovered, there is still a belief that some may remain hidden, waiting to be discovered. The tomb of Cleopatra, one of Egypt's most famous and enigmatic rulers, has never been found. Despite numerous searches and speculation about her final resting place, archaeologists continue to believe that it may be buried somewhere along the Nile, its location hidden by time and political turmoil. Similarly, the tomb of Alexander the Great, who also had strong ties to Egypt, has yet to be discovered, adding to the mystery that surrounds the river's past. Beyond the search for lost cities and tombs, the Nile may still harbor treasures that have yet to be uncovered. Artifacts, sculptures, and sacred objects, many of which were believed to have been lost or stolen over the centuries, could still lie in wait beneath the river's surface. The discovery of ancient ships, religious relics, and ceremonial items along the Nile would not only provide valuable insight into Egypt's religious practices, but also offer a glimpse into the lives of the common people who lived alongside the river. These treasures could help complete the historical record, shedding light on aspects of Egyptian life that have remained obscured for thousands of years. In recent years, technology has played a crucial role in the quest to uncover these secrets. The development of satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, and underwater archaeology has opened up new frontiers in the search for hidden artifacts and structures. Satellite imagery, for example, has allowed researchers to map out previously undiscovered sites along the Nile, identifying anomalies in the landscape that could signal the presence of ancient ruins. Underwater archaeology, meanwhile, has enabled divers and archaeologists to explore submerged sites like Heracleion, revealing entire cities that were once lost to the river's currents. With these technologies, we now have the ability to explore parts of the Nile that were once inaccessible, dramatically expanding the possibilities for future discoveries. However, as these new technologies allow us to uncover more of the Nile's secrets, they also raise important ethical considerations. Modern explorers face the dilemma of how to balance the drive for discovery with the need to preserve Egypt's ancient heritage. While uncovering lost tombs and cities may be exhilarating, it is also crucial to ensure that these sites are not damaged or destroyed in the process. Archaeologists and conservationists must work together to preserve artifacts and structures in their original contexts, using non-invasive techniques wherever possible to prevent the loss of vital historical information. In some cases, such as with the discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun, the removal of artifacts must be carefully managed to prevent damage to the objects themselves and to the tomb that contains them. The ethical challenges are further complicated by the modern-day looting of ancient sites. Despite legal protections and international agreements aimed at preserving Egypt's cultural heritage, the black market for antiquities remains a significant problem. The illicit trade in stolen artifacts continues to fuel the destruction of Egypt's ancient sites, with looters using increasingly sophisticated methods to uncover and sell treasures. This has led to the creation of special task forces and partnerships between international organizations to combat the trafficking of antiquities and safeguard Egypt's archaeological heritage. However, the challenge remains immense, as the desire for fame and fortune often outweighs the respect for history and preservation. Despite these challenges, the future of Nile exploration is filled with promise. With the continued development of technology and increased international cooperation, we are poised to uncover more of the river's secrets in the years to come. The potential for discovery is vast, and the questions that remain unanswered about lost cities, hidden tombs, and forgotten treasures continue to drive archaeologists, historians, and explorers to dig deeper. In the coming decades, we may find ourselves standing on the threshold of even greater revelations as the Nile's mysteries slowly unfurl before us. But as we look to the future, the Nile's enduring role as both a physical and spiritual force in Egyptian history serves as a reminder that some mysteries may never be fully solved. The river, with its ancient currents and sacred waters, continues to captivate the imagination, offering new discoveries while maintaining its hold on the unknown. Perhaps the true mystery of the Nile lies not just in what has been discovered, but in the questions that remain unanswered. As long as the river flows, the mysteries of Egypt's past will continue to beckon, challenging us to look deeper, question more, and explore the boundaries of our knowledge. With these lingering questions and the promise of future discoveries, we conclude this exploration of the Nile's enduring mysteries. From the lost civilizations that may still lie beneath its surface to the technological advancements that bring us closer to uncovering its secrets, the Nile remains as captivating as ever. It is not just a river. It is a symbol of the eternal search for understanding, a reminder that the past, with all its hidden wonders, is never truly gone. The river continues to flow, carrying with it the mysteries of Egypt and the hope of future discoveries. The Nile, ancient, mysterious, and eternal, will continue to shape the destiny of Egypt and the world. What other stories are waiting to be told? Throughout this journey, we have explored the many facets of the Nile's profound impact on Egypt, its civilization, and its people. From the river's vital role in sustaining life to its deeply spiritual connection with the afterlife, the Nile has proven to be more than just a physical entity. It is a lifeline, a divine pathway, and an eternal symbol of Egypt's enduring legacy. As we reflect on all we have uncovered, one truth remains clear: the Nile's mysteries are far from over. For thousands of years, the Nile has been the beating heart of Egypt, a river that has witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the birth of dynasties, and the creation of some of the world's greatest monuments. Its waters have sustained agriculture, supported trade, and provided a conduit for spiritual and religious practices. The river has been revered as a god, a protector, and a guide to the afterlife. From the time of the pharaohs to the present day, the Nile has played a central role in shaping Egypt's identity. Even as the world changes, the river's influence remains constant, a reminder of the deep connection between Egypt's past and its future. The search for the secrets hidden along its banks continues to captivate the imagination of explorers, historians, and travelers alike. Despite centuries of study and exploration, the Nile still holds mysteries that have yet to be unraveled. Lost cities, undiscovered tombs, and ancient treasures continue to elude modern archaeologists. With the advent of new technologies like satellite imaging, underwater archaeology, and ground-penetrating radar, we are on the verge of uncovering even more of the river's secrets. Yet, with each discovery, the Nile leaves us with more questions than answers, fueling our curiosity and our desire to learn more about this eternal river and the civilization it nurtured. The mysteries of the Nile are not just about what lies beneath its waters or hidden along its banks, they are also about what the river symbolizes. The Nile has always been more than a river to the people of Egypt. It is a reflection of the spiritual, cultural, and philosophical framework that underpinned Egyptian civilization. It represents life and death, creation and destruction, the cyclical nature of existence. For the ancient Egyptians, the Nile was both a source of sustenance and a bridge to the divine. It connected the realms of the living and the dead, carrying the souls of the departed to the afterlife, where they would be judged and reborn. In this way, the Nile was not just a river, but a symbol of eternity itself. Even in modern Egypt, the Nile's influence is felt daily. It continues to shape the country's identity, providing the resources for life, industry, and agriculture. The river remains central to Egypt's economy, serving as a vital source of water, transportation, and energy. The modern-day people of Egypt continue to revere the Nile, celebrating its role in their lives and its significance in their history. The river that once nourished the pharaohs continues to sustain the country today, and its spiritual and cultural importance has not diminished. The Wafar el-Nil festival, which marks the arrival of the river's annual flood, remains a vibrant celebration of Egypt's connection to the Nile, reinforcing the timeless bond between the people and the land. The enduring mystery of the Nile is part of what makes it so captivating. The river has been a source of inspiration for generations of explorers, poets, and artists. Its timeless beauty, its life-giving waters, and its role in shaping one of the world's oldest civilizations continue to inspire awe and wonder. The Nile's secrets are still waiting to be uncovered, its stories still waiting to be told. And in a world where the pace of discovery seems ever accelerating, the idea that there are still hidden wonders beneath the surface is a reminder that there is always more to learn. But the Nile's mysteries are not just about what has yet to be found. They are also about what they represent: our unending quest for understanding, the pursuit of knowledge, and the desire to connect with the past. Each discovery made along the Nile deepens our understanding of ancient Egypt. But it also brings us closer to understanding ourselves. The way the ancient Egyptians viewed their world, their beliefs, their practices, these are all reflections of universal human experiences that continue to resonate today. The Nile serves as a bridge, not only between the past and the present, but between cultures, societies, and generations. The river that once carried the pharaohs to the afterlife continues to flow, its waters shaping Egypt and the world beyond. And as the mysteries of the Nile unfold, we are reminded that the journey of discovery is never truly finished. The river, like the civilization it sustained, is eternal. It will continue to guide us, inspire us, and challenge us to seek out the stories that remain hidden beneath its surface. As this documentary draws to a close, we leave you with a sense of awe and wonder. The Nile, with all its secrets, continues to captivate the imagination, inviting us to look deeper, explore further, and question what lies beneath the surface. It is a river that has shaped history, culture, and spirituality, and it will continue to do so for generations to come. What other stories remain waiting to be uncovered? What other mysteries lie hidden in the shadows of its banks, awaiting the right moment to emerge? The answers, like the river itself, remain in motion, carrying us forward on a journey that has no true end.